Hi there, and welcome to the Festival of Pineapples, the live judging of the Pineapples Awards for Place. This is an awards programme that seeks to recognise built environment projects and initiatives that make a positive social impact on wider place and its people. This is the judging category of Place in Progress. I'm Laura Mark, and I'm head of casework at the 20th Century Society, and I'm going to be the chair for this category. This Pineapple Award recognises a place that is partway through its development cycle and has made a promising start on the journey to completion. The judges are seeking a project that, even unfinished, is already fostering community, welcoming visitors, attracting tenants, and contributing to urban life. The category is sponsored by Tectonics, who are partnering with us on the Pineapple for Place in Progress. We have some great finalists to share with you. So here's a reminder of the rules. Each presenter has 10 minutes to pitch to the judges, who then have 10 minutes to ask questions. After hearing all the presentations, the judges will deliberate in private to decide on the winner. The winners will be announced at an awards party on the 22nd of April at Trinity Buoy Wharf in London. Tickets to the party are on sale now at thepineapples.co.uk. A selection of finalists will also be invited to present their project on stage at this summer's Festival of Place on the 10th of June at Box Park, Wembley, in London. Passes to the festival are on sale now. It's a great event, so recommend it. Feel free to use the emoji button below, which is at the bottom of your screen, to cheer on all the presenters and to share comments in the chat. We want to hear what you have to think about the projects. The judges will be the only ones asking questions, though. If you want to make the presentation slides bigger, you can enable full screen mode. There's a kind of pop-out button at the top towards the right of your viewing window. Okay, so all that admin out the way, time to meet our judges for this category. Please welcome Will Sandy, who's a founding director of Will Sandy Design Studio. Will is a landscape architect and environmentally focused designer. He joins the dots between architecture, art, the environment, and imagination, adopting an innovative approach to the standard design process. Will works across various sites, scales, and styles, from furniture design, urban interventions, and small-scale architectural projects to larger strategies and place and master planning. Across all his projects, Will seeks, where possible, to challenge the status quo and, most importantly, prove how good design can influence behavioural change to ensure we all work together to address the climate emergency. Thanks. So next up, we've got Esther Everett. She's a director of placemaking at the London Legacy Development Corporation. Esther has experience across a broad range of sectors and has worked within the regeneration, planning authority, and development functions in senior positions at LLDC and OPDC. In her current position as head of design for LLDC, she is responsible for ensuring high quality is delivered across LLDC's development portfolio, including 5,000 homes, as well as infrastructure, leisure, public realm, landscaping, and retrofit projects. More recently, she has been leading the LLDC's place strategy to develop QEOP as a local and global destination. Esther is also co-chair of London Borough of Haringey's Quality Review Panel and a non-exec director of Future of London. Our next judge is Claire Sanders, who's a director at JDDK Architects. Claire is an architect and director at JDDK Architects based in Newcastle upon Tyne. She's worked across a broad range of sectors, including healthcare, leisure, education, and commercial. Through her personal interest and specialism lies in residential design. She's passionate about functional design, which helps places and communities thrive, and how the quality of the home environment can impact our quality of life, be it through spatial, sustainability, or neighbourhood factors. And our final judge for today is James Gosden, a specifications director at Tectonics. James' early interest and love of places led to a degree and postgrad in town planning and urban design, and then chartership to the RTPI. This in turn led to a wonderful 10 years working as a senior planner and urban designer in the UK and New Zealand. James always had an interest in the materiality of places, and in 2013 he joined Marshalls, working in their specification team. James went on to lead regional and national specification teams, assisting many fantastic designers as they shaped some of the most noteworthy landscape projects of the last decade. In 2025, James made the move to Tectonics to lead their work with designers, getting back to his love of people, projects, and big bits of stone. So now it's time to hear from our first project. First up, we've got Park Hill, Sheffield, for urban splash and places for people, with Michael Riches, Austin Smith Lord, Broadfield Project Management, Civic Beachfield, and Green Gauge Building Energy Consultants. This is going to be presented by Annalie Riches, founding director Michael Riches. Okay, Annalie, you can take it away. You've got 10 minutes before I give you a little warning.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So Park Hill Flats was completed in 1961. It was 1,000 homes. I think it's the largest listed building in the UK, or maybe even Europe. And it's been built as a number of phases. Phase 1 by Hawkins Brown and Studio Egrey West is very well known and completed, I think it was 2006. We've done stage 2, which is now finished. Stage 3 by Whittam Cox Architects is student housing. Stage 4 is on site, and stage 5 will hopefully follow. It has planning permission, but with Park Hill, who knows? It was the first of 4 mega structures that Sheffield City Council built. In a decade, they managed to complete 4,000 homes, and it's the only one that's left. All of them were based on the idea of streets in the sky. So you lift the streets off the ground, and you access either your flat above street or below street, and every single flat is a duplex. They originally, it's quite a British form of brutalism. It's concrete frame with brick infill panels, and the bricks were chosen with an artist and gradated in colour up to the sky. It was hailed a success, much copied, and it remained a success. It had everything you wanted there. It had shops, schools, pubs, a church. But in the 80s, it started to decline. A lack of maintenance, widespread job losses. There were lots of reasons for its failure, and a lot of people in Sheffield wanted to see it demolished, along with the other 4 projects. It got listed in 1998, and then Urban Splash won the competition to redevelop it. I probably think they didn't know what they were quite getting into, but it needed a complete facelift, and it needed a new image. And so the phase 1 reinvented Park Hill. It was this shiny new building, and gradually it started filling with new people and businesses. And then when it came to phase 2, they had another competition. They decided they wanted a lighter touch approach, and they had this really unusual competition in that they gave us the keys to the building, a flat, and told us just to wander around, and the interviewers inviting the jury into the flat and showing them what we'd done. And I think it was that process of wandering around the building, and you couldn't help feel the ghosts of the people that had lived there. There were lots of things left behind by people, and we started to notice the things people had done to the building to make their flat into their home. And one of the things quite a lot of people had done was paint the balcony cheeks, and we wondered why this was. Maybe it's so they could see their home in the whole from the outside, or maybe they just didn't like looking at brickwork. And our flat had this white brick where someone had painstakingly painted in all the mortar joints. Another thing we noticed was the bricks were actually in really good condition, which was surprising because the concrete frame was quite severely degraded. And actually it turned out this is because they'd been laid in lime mortar and actually had been able to move with the building. So we really wanted to keep the bricks, and actually all we've done is give it a light clean, and we kept the mortar. We also had the benefits of thermal imaging on phase 1, which showed us where the most problematic cold bridging was, particularly these lateral beams that go into the building. And so if we could insulate those, then we could massively improve the thermal performance. And so this led us to develop this idea. We'd keep the bricks on the surface, and we'd insulate and colour these reveals of the flats. And this was our competition entry. It was a piece of graffiti that showed that from the front, Park Hill looked the same. It was just kind of cleaned up, and as you turn the corner, you could start to see the individual homes within it. We were given these plans. As I said, it was a 2-week competition, so we didn't have much time to really interrogate it. And we talked to the sales office. They said that the above street flats had sold really well, and so we thought, well, we won't really mess with those. We had decided to tackle the below street flats. The pink flat we called the sad flat. It was just a single bedroom and a kitchen. And so we spent our 2 weeks trying to work out what we could do on the below street level. We assumed this was a repetitive cluster of flats that would go across the whole building. But actually, when we finally won the competition and got to have a look at the whole plan, we realized there's no repetitive cluster of flats in this building. It's kind of nuts. And actually, there are two different pink flats, and they repeat randomly across the facade. And I think this probably is because the apocryphal story about trying to keep people together as they lifted the flats into the sky may be perhaps true, although it's a crazy way to design a building. But I think the strong kind of sense of community there was really important to the architects. It's a tricky building in section because there's very low floor to floor heights. It's 2515, which is about 0.5 meter less than you'd normally build it. Massive coal bridging. The deck or the street is the biggest problem, but also the facade steps in and out. And it's needed a really incremental process to look at where we can add insulation where possible and what compromise we accept in terms of floor to ceiling heights. The streets are, again, tricky because there's no passive surveillance. They turn blind corners. And we really wanted to improve the feeling of walking along these streets and the sense that there were people living there, which you didn't get. When you look at the old photos, you can see people have customized their thresholds with this lino that everyone put a different lino on there. And when we looked, they were still there. So we did a lino survey and developed these doormats that we extended them a bit further into the street to give people a bit more defensible space and also to try and discourage people from walking right next to the doors and at night that they're lit. We really loved phase one, the way that they introduced these corner windows to all the below street flats, and people had started to customize them. Apparently one street has a competition for the best Christmas display, and we really wanted to take this idea into phase two and give everyone this space to customize, but also to improve the surveillance onto the street. So from the outside, this is the street side. The bricks have just had a really simple clean. We've recessed the windows back into the thermal air to try and give the brick panels the same relevance as the phase one aluminium colored panels. From the deck side, it looks a bit like our stencil graffiti. It's from the front, it's kind of cleaned up with new windows. But as you turn the corner, you start to see the different flats within the whole. The colors on the balcony reveals are reflected in the door colors, and at night these are lit. With the different patterns of the door mats, with the door colors, everyone has their own front door. They're all unique. When it came to phase four, we decided we really needed to look at how well the building performed, and we wanted to learn from it in the same way we'd managed to learn from phase one. So we got Simple Works to do a proper carbon analysis of the building. And I can't really read the screen at the moment. You can see that, yeah, let's move on. Yeah, I think in the operational carbon, we'd achieved an 87% improvement, which was a big surprise, to be honest, because obviously the insulation of the building was quite difficult. We've only managed to add thin layers because of the floor to ceiling heights. But when you look at it more closely, 50% of that is because of the decarbonisation of the grid, and 50% is the result of the work that we've done. And then when you look at the upfront embodied carbon, there's a massive savings here. You can see that it's reduced, reusing the structure and the foundations has had a massive impact. Again, I can't see the numbers because it's too small. I think it's gone from 109, from 500 compared to a best new build to 190. So really, I'd say justifying keeping any building, to be honest. But in The next phase, phase 4, 125 homes. As I said, it's just started on site. And phase 5 will be a further 95 homes. I think one of the pleasures of working on a building for a long time is you get to meet the people who live there. And there has been quite an extraordinary sense of community that's developed incredibly quickly in phase 2. And this offshoot concrete communities has started to make connections between people that live in these kind of buildings. Laura, you're going to tell me I've run out of time?
Yep, you guessed it.
I was just going to say Park Hill isn't finished. It's 60 years old. Hopefully we've had another 60 years. There's still a massive site in the middle, and I sense it's not the end of its story.
Thanks, Annalie. Great presentation. I'm going to bring the judges back now to ask you questions. So, Will, you've visited Park Hill. Do you want to start first?
Yeah, great. Thanks for a really interesting presentation, Annalie. I love the customization elements. I think that really is Sheffield to a T. I just wanted to understand, having a part of the tender process, you've lived in the building, and how I've only visited in the day. So what does it feel like, and how have you worked to sort of make it feel safe approaching what is quite an imposing set of buildings when some are still empty, and how you sort of work that into the phasing and design approach?
Well, we didn't live there. We spent 2 weeks kind of wandering around, and actually it was built during COVID, which was an absolute nightmare. We had kind of ships stuck in the Suez Canal with, I don't know if you remember all that stuff. So our project architect, Alan, went and lived in phase 1 for a month and was on site every day trying to help. It was quite chaotic. I don't know. I was a student at Sheffield. I've never thought it was a really imposing building. I was indoctrinated to love it. It certainly had, whilst it had its haters, it had people in Sheffield that really did love the building. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it is imposing.
Okay.
Claire, do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for a brilliant presentation. I really like the approach you've taken with the streets in the sky and how they've been customised to kind of reflect people's personalities. Obviously, with the phases moving through, have you had the benefit of being able to undertake resident consultation with those from the occupied phases and take that learning through, or is it just kind of the hindsight from the client?
Yeah, I mean, there has been a lot of that, particularly in terms of environmental performance. Through phase 1, they actually changed. There was an existing district heating system, and yeah, that was monitored. In the end, we've gone direct electric, so there's a constant learning through the whole process. That's one of the reasons we got the post occupancy analysis done, so that we could improve. Phase 5, I think, will be the greenest. I think there's going to be hopefully PVs, and it might be that we can start looking at different ways of servicing it. So yeah, there has been a lot of that.
Thanks. Esther, do you want to chip in with the next question?
Yeah, thank you. I love listening to that, Annalie. It was wonderful. I could listen to more, basically. My question is around the kind of spaces between the buildings, and how, you talked a lot, obviously, this is a building around Streets in the Sky. Phase 1 is complete. You've had, and 2, and you've had control over the latter phases. Has there been an approach to the landscaping, or how you kind of navigate vertically these communities and horizontally?
It's really tricky, because originally Park Hill was designed that every street, well, apart from the top one, hit the ground. I think that was one of the reasons that when it started kind of going downhill, it did become a great place for crime. You could escape. But actually then introducing kind of cores that have some kind of monitoring, but also keeping the streets continuous, because that was part of the original design. Wayfinding has been, oh, sorry, that's our fire alarm. Great. The wayfinding of the blocks has been really complicated. the numbering of the flats. So I think it's working well, but it hasn't been an easy job. Because obviously the continuity of the streets is really important, but giving people some sense of kind of being able to get in and out without anyone being able to get in is
What about what about the landscaping between the kind of different phases? Like, has there been a landscape architect on board? Like, how
yes, so
that was being tied together?
Austin Smith Law did ours. Because ours is a horseshoe, we've actually put a residence garden. It's about the only really enclosed area. So we've put a residence garden there that any of the residents can access. So it is fobbed. It's about the only private outdoor space for residents in the estate. What's really weird is you think it's the same building, but every single phase has a really different landscape feeling about it. Phase 4 is really wooded. And so that's going to have a different landscape approach. And phase 5's got this really extraordinary little garden in the middle that has these amazing views of Sheffield. Yeah, they are very different.
Great, thank you. And James, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, thanks, Laura. I really enjoyed that, Annalie. That was fascinating to hear all the work that's been done. I just wondered whether there was much in the way for or opportunities for community ownership of the spaces around, if there's activations going on, if there's events and things that are planned to bring that community together a little bit. I totally understand that the streets in the sky have the opportunity to separate a little bit, but are there things going on that are bringing those communities together?
I mean, there's a lot going on. I talked a bit about Concrete Communities, who have had this, conferences. We were in the first conference, and their question was, why have we formed such a strong community? What is it about this building that has made it so, just foster this incredible community? I mean, they've now got their own, they do tours. They've set up this thing where we don't have to do tours anymore. They're doing them. I get a sense that there's something about the streets and the deck access that has actually brought people together, and people got to know each other incredibly quickly.
Yeah, great to hear.
Great.
Must be a real pride in it if they're that keen to show it off and walk people around it.
I think the buildings brought them all together. I think that's what they've got in common. They just absolutely love it.
Fantastic.
We've probably got time for one more question if one of the judges wants to chip in with a final question.
Can you just set out what the kind of overall timescale is for this place being a place in progress? So, like, there's there's constant change with the construction going on. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and how you navigated that in the role that you've had?
I've got a feeling this will always be a place in progress. I find it really, we actually did a scheme for a hotel for a bit of it, and it made a brilliant hotel. It makes brilliant student housing. It makes brilliant flats and businesses. I don't know. I think it's, a kind of maybe a model we could look at again. Why not? The ideas behind it are the things that we're going back to. Whilst it was rejected wholesale because of the failures, which I don't think were because of the architecture at all, the ideas behind it were, it's J.L. Wormsley who was really focused on taking people away from cars and the fostering communities around safe streets. And it has this, every flat faces towards the south and all the streets face towards the north. So this idea about daylight, sunlight, these are really sound principles. It's got great bones. I think it will continue to change.
Thank you. I think that's about all we've got time for, but a really good summary of that project, Annalie. So we're going to move on to our next project. Thank you. So the next project up is the Brentford project in the London Borough of Hounslow for Ballymore, with Alford Hall, Monaghan Morris, Howells, McCrella Lavington and Grant Associates. This is going to be presented by Paul Monaghan, Executive Director and Head of Design Studio at Alford Hall Monaghan Morris, and also Keith French, the Director at Grants. Thanks.
Andrew, do you want me to share that?
Sorry, I've got a lot of background noise. Is that I can't hear myself.
That's okay, we can hear you.
Okay, no, I can't concentrate because there's loads of background noise.
Okay.
Oh, it's gone.
All right.
Brilliant.
You've got 10 minutes then, Paul.
Great, thanks a lot, Laura. What I wanted to say is this is a project that we won in competition as a joint master plan with HMM, Howells, McQueen Lavington and Grant Associates. And we won the project 16 years ago. It took an awful long time to move on, but this is the aerial view of the overall master plan. The Brentford project is set in the heart of Brentford, which is just north of Kew Gardens, west of Chelsea. And it was a very large site that Ballymore attained with, working with Hounslow Council, right on the River Brent, you can see at the bottom, and faced onto the High Street. Originally, Brent became quite prosperous because Brentford Dock, a big rail line, spur off the main west of England line, came into it, which delivered freights, which then went from the dock all the way to the Isle of Dogs. So it was an important town. It then basically became quite prosperous, and so it's really hard with. It's really hard with the noise in the background. Sorry, everyone. It was a very prosperous town, and this is some of the images from about 70 years ago. But unfortunately, over time, it had slightly decayed. People had left the town, and the quality of public space and the urban realm was not quite as strong as it was. And that included all the way through into the river itself. And that one of the main problems was, and this is a view of it about 40 years ago, but looking back from the river up to the town centre, the trouble was that although the high street was there was no connection to the river. And indeed, if you look at this next plan, it was all private land effectively. So there was no connection at the waterfront. So you could go through Brentford not even realising there was water there. And one of the first things we looked at was, as a team, was looking at the existing buildings and which ones were worth keeping and had some heritage value, but also character. So they weren't all just listed buildings. This is just some of those buildings. Probably predominantly on opposite our site was the Magistrates Court, which had been turned into a community building with a landscape by Lincolnear in front of it. So we wanted to address this. 3 simple ideas: recreating the historical high street, but with smaller stores along there, not big, huge shops, small shops to replicate what was there before. The idea of a middle high density, but mid-rise apartments where we were pushing dimensions of streets to make them narrower, to give them more character. And in a way, what this actually did was recreate the old yards that used to go from the high street to the river in the Victorian times. And then finally, obviously, recreating the historical waterfront. It had fantastic ecology there, but no one could get to it. We then divide it into plots. You can see some of the older lanes and some of the yards, and we've tried to make the scheme as permeable as possible. And this is then the master plan that we, as I said, got planning for in 2015. And you can see all the different plots. Each architect designed one of the plots, some in outline, some in full. And again, you can see the permeability. As I mentioned, all of this was based on the public realm, so making it totally permeable, very, very few roads within the scheme, and any roads we did have would be very much shared services and only open at certain times. That's the plan, but Keith will talk about that later. Working with grants was a key part of it. That was the key offer to the public, I think. And then very simple buildings, sort of finger buildings going north-south with larger courtyards in between them. And then actually, just 2 moments of height of 10 stories on the riverfront, but mostly lower at High Street, and then just stepping up a little bit to 7 stories, etc., into the main buildings. And then this is the overall master plan, and as we look through there was one of the buildings in the middle was built as the affordable by them originally, and then the Wheel, and I can't even read it, and the other two are HMM and Coffee. And then finally there was a car park that was one of the first things to do with displaced car parking spaces on the site, and that's like a gateway building we did about 8 years ago. But then I'm really going to talk today about phase 1, which is done by Howells, McQueen & Lavington and us. And this is the plan of the building. I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit later, and then the upper levels with the deck levels and the communal, and then the model we made in 2014. If I can just go to the next one. What we did as a team was encourage everyone to create an architecture that's quite individual. There wasn't some idea of making the whole thing coherent in terms of materials. It was important to us that the buildings looked time. So if I start with the McQueen & Lavington building, which was a sort of London stock brick, which very much took its toll from the sorry, Keith, I think it's your office actually. Sorry, it's really noisy here. That's brilliant. Thank you. Everyone can hear me still. And then McQueen & Lavington took the thing from the industrial nature of the site, and I think all of us to a certain element. The difficult thing they had to deal with is a large supermarket at the bottom of Morrison's. They did this by creating a pavilion as an entrance, almost like a civic building, which sort of addresses the magistrate courts beyond. And then just simple units above with this very large courtyard. And then all the way down one of the yards, you can see that it's lined with small units. And then the same as it goes around the base of the building. It also steps back because at times that yard is quite narrow. And then inside a very generous courtyard for all the residents. Our building was right next to this, and again addressed the high street. Ours had smaller units, restaurants, and then the purple is a cinema, an Everyman cinema, and the yellow are older buildings that were refurbished. Again, you can see here, there's pinch points about 10 meters, and then about 12 meters in the middle in terms of the alleyways. And that was very important to us, and was a bit of a struggle with the council at first, but it certainly feels like it's worked. Again, simple plan above. And just to remind you, that was the high street, and this is pretty much from the same view. McQueen & Lavington's corner just on the right, and our buildings almost as 3 simple bays with an arcade on the corner leading down to one of the lanes. On the other side of the lanes is an old building that we refurbished, and in that case it's a Gales, but actually the only chains on the site are Gales and Everyman. All the others are local businesses who Ballymore worked with to try and bring in local expertise. You can see there the way that the magistrates court's framed by the yard, and then again a large courtyard beyond. And then as we go down onto the River Brent into Workhouse Dock, you can see that courtyard opens out onto the River Brent. And then Ballymore are known for doing, putting a lot of effort into their apartments. Finally, we go to Howells building. And in a way, this building was on the kink of the river, so it was really important that it sort of twisted. And it's a very simple plan with an awful lot of dual aspect units, with the core in the middle being actually open to the air. I think, again, the very, very large balconies are one of the main features onto the dock here, and we're a key part of the sales in terms of the building. So they worked incredibly well. And at the ground floor of that building is a local restaurant by someone who had a restaurant elsewhere in the town. Ballymore helped to set it up, and it's become a real heart of this neighbourhood now. Again, you can see it against McQueen & Lavington's building. And again, these amazing views higher up into Kew Gardens. And again, from inside the apartment. Okay, Keith.
So, as Paul mentioned, one of the key ambitions for the Brentford project was to open up and reconnect the town with its waterfront. And this is Workhouse Dock, transformed from this hidden edge and sort of concealed space into a new a new destination for the town and indeed London. A space now that invites us for people to spend time, to engage with the water, and just to enjoy. The River Brent is tidal, and the terracing helps managing access. It helps with the flood mitigation, and is a flexible space for events, not only for the town, but also for the canal side community as well. The next slide shows that connectivity and movement were key themes and threads that ran through the whole place, not only linking the high street by interpreting the traditional lanes and yards, but also creating stepping stones for ecology and helping to bring back biodiversity and restoring the original Thames pathway. The next slide just starts to show that multi-layered approach to the greening, creating this sort of significant piece of multi-layered green infrastructure and piece of urban realm to help bring ecology back into the town. And the following quick slides, I know I'm going to wrap up, Laura.
Yeah.
I think, life and the Brentford project has brought life back to the waterfront. It's become an amazing destination for waterside activities, for areas to spend and socialize, but also life after dark. So thinking carefully about the after dark experience as well, not only in terms of safety and for events, but also thinking about the ecology and the sort of the Bat superhighway that runs along the Brent and the Thames.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith and Paul. Great presentation again. James, you've been to see this project, haven't you? Do you want to ask our first question?
Yeah, I have. Thanks very much, Paul. Thank you very much, Keith. That was fascinating. And yeah, you're right. I visited. I had the pleasure of visiting the site. Fantastic. That permeability is really noticeable as well. And that connection to the river it was really easy to navigate. As somebody that had been to the site for the first time, it was easy to walk through. One question I had was around the management and maintenance of the site going forward. So just opposite your site, you've got the Brentford Market Square, which, if memory serves me, was an LI President's Award winning scheme, which less than 10 years later is really quite tired already. And it just struck me that you've created some wonderful public realm, really active public realm. How's that managed to maintain in the long term to keep it as fantastic as it's looking right now?
Yeah, and I'd agree with you, James. That square was by sadly departed Lincoln, and it was really beautiful when it opened. That is unfortunately down to the council. The whole estate in because it is such a large site is looked after by Ballymore, who have huge track record of looking after it. And I think that, so if you like, the stewardship of the project is that they're in it for the long term. Well, they're already 16 years in, and it probably won't get finished 2030. That shows a pretty big commitment. So yeah, it's important to them, because the whole thing, what they realize, if you get the ground floor working, the use is right, activity there, it's what brings people to want to live there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks. Esther, you've also been to the site, haven't you? Do you want to ask the next question?
Yes, I've been on one of the scary balconies. The red ones that go out. I'm not sure. We might need to get used to those. Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation, and it's really great to see both landscape and architecture present and demonstrate that integration. Can you tell us a little bit more about who lives here and how sort of the communities mixed with the surrounding communities, and sort of also what the tenure mix is? I know there's a lot of owner occupation, and on the back of that, whether you or Ballymore have been collecting feedback post occupancy evaluation, and how that might help us understand the place.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, the 3 plots we're doing are all private. There is some shared ownership. The plot that was to the right of that, to the left of that Gales Cafe, was the affordable block, which in the end Haringey wanted to build themselves, and BDP did that. So all the affordable allocation is built as pure affordable. I think what's interesting is Ballymore very good with their consultation. They had their marketing suite was also a cafe. It was a classic car sort of dealership that had been on the site for 20 years was made sort of almost the entrance to come in. So you'd see these lovely old Ford Capris and things when you walked in, and that was all the way through the construction, which was both selling but also doing community events. I think in the end what they found, 30 to 40% of people are either downsiders or people from the local area moving. All of the people live there. No one is renting out in that way. So I think that tribute to the research they did on the demographic, what people want, and that also goes down to the uses on the ground floor. So yeah, I think it is, obviously it attracts young professionals, downsizers, and I think that's really where we've got to with it. Yeah. And obviously there's only 350 flats. The other 450 or 500 are going to be built over the next two. Well, some of them you probably saw already on site. So yeah.
I think just to add to that, Esther, was the existing canal site community as well. So there are a number of residential moorings that have been integrated into the scheme, both as part of phase 1, but also certainly in phase 2, there's another wharf that will become for residential moorings. So that
it's worth pointing. Sorry, Keith. It's worth pointing out it was incredibly controversial. That's why it took an awful long time to get planning. The people who lived where the dock used to be, which is a sort of brutalist, lovely old brutalist building, very protective about their privacy. And as far as they were concerned, the two 10-story buildings were tower blocks. But everyone on the Brent High Street side really enjoyed the idea of a new scheme because they realised they could never get to the river.
Thank you. Will, do you want to jump in with the next question?
Yeah, I guess just building on that, Paul, there's sort of idea of place-based perception and this psychological severance that's been there for decades, and now you've opened it up, albeit through sort of privately owned public space, and what you've done and how you'll carry that through as the place evolves in engaging and sort of drawing people in from the wider area. I think it's very easy to sort of get people who've bought into this development, but as you sort of recognise, getting those who feel maybe like it's not for them to come along as a place evolves. And those photos look really engaging and resolved, but obviously there's hoarding and all things going on. So just, yeah, building that narrative of place and sort of making it part of Brentford as a whole.
I think, Keith, that's probably more what you've been doing with it. You're on mute, Keith, I think.
Yes, yeah. Sorry. Well, sorry.
Sorry, Keith.
I think our starting point was thinking about place, really trying to get beneath the skin of Brentford in terms of its character and its history, and it is this interesting sort of interspace between sort of city, somewhere that's urban, but also kind of almost industrial and agricultural, and we try to sort of bring that in terms of the sort of the material qualities and the sort of the riparian character in terms of its relationship to the river. So I think that was very much our starting point. It was trying to sort of ground it and root it into Brentford, and also understanding the people and the culture. So Paul referenced the classic car people, and there is a town that's full of makers and creators and bakers, because that was the other thing that Ballymore brought in quite early on was an amazing sort of bakery. So trying to find places that can help support the local community in that respect.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one final question from Claire.
Yeah, thank you. That was really, really interesting. I really admire the approach taken to the social sustainability side, the focus on trying to bring in the businesses and actually really shape the place in that sense, and also the heritage aspect and the reuse of existing buildings where possible. Can I ask briefly, I'm aware it's a very large topic, but were there any sort of environmental carbon sustainability targets that ran alongside that?
So they got planning permission 12 years ago, the whole, and we got building regs just after. The whole element of that, everything has changed so much, so it's very difficult to compare buildings that have got planning permission 2 years ago. But I would say it's got, I mean, you're quite right, it's built a lot on the sustainability of the area, the fact that the ecology at the front has been, brought back to life and enhanced, and actually permeability. But I get that is, a sort of different use of sustainability. It's got, I mean, the fabric is built to really high standards, got very high performance insulation, very low air tightness. So I think it was just, and it does have low energy in terms of its operation. Ballymore were always interested in that, and things like the acoustic protection because of the closeness of the apartments. But I'd say those are the elements. But it was literally at that moment where things suddenly shifted and building regs changed. So I'd be lying if I said it's sort of anywhere near what we would be doing now with Ballymore, but the later phases are.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all we've got time for, but thanks for your answers and some great questions from the judges there. James has been let loose with the clapping sounds again.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
In Sunderland, for Sunderland City Council and Igloo Regeneration with One Environments, Cundall, Esh Construction, Faulkner Brown, Procter & Matthews, Camlins, Jasper Care, Ryder Architecture and Tonkin Liu. Huge team on this one. This is going to be presented by James Brewer, Director at One Environments. So James,
Thanks.
You've got 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll keep it snappy. Okay, morning everyone, thank you. So Riverside Sunderland, it is quite an ambitious development plan for the city. I'll be talking more specifically about the Riverside Park and the Southern Gateway. It's a civic landscape that aims to reconnect the city with its river. It's important to note, though, that it's not just about a new park. It's about creating a framework for how Sunderland is starting to reshape its city centre. And to put this into context, it's important to look at scale and ambition. It's a 33-hectare regeneration area. It secured 350 to 400 million pounds of investment from both public and private sectors. It's creating 1,000 homes within the city centre, providing over 1 million square feet of workspace, which in turn creates 10,000 jobs for the local community. And I think what makes this different is it's all centred upon this 14-hectare green-blue urban network. Here, the landscape isn't seen simply as an inconvenience or taking up development area or filling development gaps. It's providing a core structure that's then in turn unlocking the city's development ambitions. Looking back historically, it is an industrial waterfront. It's had the Vaux Brewery on site, before that the shipbuilding and the coal mining industries. And as with many of these urban industrial riverside settings, it's ended up fragmenting and disconnecting from the river to the city. So it's not simply about redevelopment. We feel it's about civic repair, and the park is providing Sunderland's centrepiece and a new civic centre, one that reconnects the city both physically and symbolically to the river, and importantly connects communities both north and south of the river to get over the divide. So as I say, it's focused on the park. It's forming this green-blue spine. It's a landscape-led framework. And as challenging as it is dramatic, it's got these incredible limestone cliff edges. It's obviously showing many industrial scars, remnants of the historical wooded gill in there, but they all combine to create this really unique and distinctive urban landscape. Together, collectively, this defines travel movement, defines ecology, defines where development can take place to create a unified new neighbourhood. So important to this is about movement and re-establishing connections across the river gorge. There's just opened end of last year the Keel Crossing. spanning the River Gorge, 250 metres in length. It's about 10 metres wide. Importantly, it's car-free, and it's already reshaping movement patterns, again, joining communities to the north and south of the river. Now, it's not just about movement, it is about climate resilience, and the climate strategy is embedded from the outset. Core to the Southern Gateway that is currently on the site at the moment are these sustainable open water terraces designed to take majority, if not all, of the surface water runoff from all the neighbouring developments and the highway through a series of water terraces and water gardens to slow water flow, cleanse the water before it enters the weir. Planted 88 climate resilient trees within this first phase, the Southern Gateway. We've also embedded wetlands and species-rich habitats within the civic forms of the park, the sinuous forms that we've developed, along with integrating habitats and insect hotels within the ribbon walls. So it's all integrated. It's important that the environmental infrastructure is intentionally not hidden. It's all part of the experience for the community. And talk about community, while the physical landscape's taking shape, community life is also beginning. It's something we feel Sunderland does extremely well. There are community groups set up all the way through the process. They've actively engaged with meaningful community sessions. They've created cultural events. They've got pop-up media screens, as you can see on the image there within the main square. They're hosting a number of international cultural events. Recently, they've hosted the Women's World Rugby in the city. And all this is all bringing community groups on board, businesses on board, and it's showing international, national and international interest from other investors as well. And it's clearly working. You can obviously tell from my accent, I'm not a local. I've lived in the region for over 30 years, but there's definitely a sense of renewed pride and passion in the city. You can really feel the energy. Of course, football successes help, but with a change that people can see, it's moved from the multitude of feasibility studies that have failed in the past to something that is actually being delivered that people can see, and it's already building momentum. As you can see, this is a visualization of the park, which is currently in progress. There's sectional parts of the Cliff Edge leisure corridor, which supports the cycle network and pedestrian network. Those are all largely complete. There's each one of these Cliff Edge cycleway and pedestrian areas. We've incorporated these jewels, these moments in time, resting points for people to enjoy and socialize, and they all offer these pretty unique commanding views down into the gorge. As a practice, we certainly believe quality matters. It is a civic environment. Materials need to be robust. They need to be relevant. There's echoes of its history in there in a contemporary way. Natural materials as well. Biodiverse planting, climate resilient planting, and so forth. But in material selection, detailing, plant selection, and these crafted edges, they all signal permanence and ambition. They build confidence, and it certainly doesn't feel temporary, but intentional. As with any of these large developments, they all rely on governance. As Laura said at the start, regenerations led by Sunderland City Council, where landscape, transport, ecology and development, they're all integrated under one coordinated vision. It's the landscape infrastructure is helping to unlock future homes, businesses and employment, and it's providing long-term stewardship, biodiversity, safety and maintenance. They're all embedded in the way the design's developed and how the surrounding developments can help ensure long-term stewardship exists in the future. So to close, what we're seeing clearly isn't a finished neighbourhood. The wider Riverside Sunderland Master Plan has a programme through to 2040 by which they're seeking to be a carbon neutral city. This is all helping shape that. It's already reconnecting the city and its river. It's already providing a catalyst for new homes, jobs and civic life. And it's also delivering Sunderland's largest new park and public realm in decades. And we're honoured to play our part in it. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Perfectly on time. If I can bring our judges back. Claire, you're based up near Sunderland and have visited this project. What's your first question?
Yeah, thank you very much, James. That was a really interesting presentation. And it's clear from the site, it's obviously an area that's still in its early phases of development. But as you mentioned, the moves that have been taken so far with the new Kale Crossing and the links, you can really feel the energy that's starting to come alive in the city and the change that's taken place. When you can see the bits of the park that's under development at the minute, the quality and the aspirations that you're trying to achieve at the Gateway are really evident. What interested me from the site visit is the levels and the sort of the juxtaposition you get with the higher level connections and the galley scale as it goes down. And there's quite a disparity down to the river, which I can see from the master plans and the submission that's really trying to address. Can you give us a little bit more information as to sort of how you envisage some of those sort of more civic spaces as you progress down into the park will help draw that life down to the river?
Yeah, I think it's about because as I'm sure you know from the area, over the years through the severance, it has become a place where people don't want to walk, they don't want to go. It's overgrown. It's suffered abuse and antisocial behaviour over the years, and what we're looking to achieve with this is a new neighbourhood and community that is part of this park. Yes, there are level challenges. Early master plan iterations had development trying to bridge the cliff edge, but the difficulties and cost of achieving that. So instead, what we're looking to do is to make meaningful movement routes and physical connections through the park. So as part of their daily life, people are using the park and walking through it. So that provides natural surveillance. We're looking through future phases of the park. There is going to be a new play park in there that's going to start terracing and breaking down the barriers of some of these layering and levels as well, so that we're bringing communities and people into the park for obviously daily use, for daily movement, and all the housing, although they're on the upper plateaus, they're looking into the park, they're close into the park. We're doing some selected clearance as well to open up some of the views, as well as replanting stuff. So I think a combination of all these things we're expecting is going to make it certainly a safer and more active park setting. I think the bridge link helps as well. There are ambitions to get a lower level bridge, but whether that happens, we'll have to see, so that we can get a closer pedestrian link at the lower levels through the park as well.
Great, thank you. You can really feel it starting to move in the area.
Thanks. Will, do you want to come in with the next question?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, James. I just wanted to understand a bit of the background and rationale of giving what is the best part of a third of the developable site over to parkland, in where that designation came from. Or, commercially developable land commands a premium, and is that to do with the topography, or really just setting a sort of sense of pride? We've seen it in Manchester and over in the Olympic Park with sort of doing landscape first, but it's a bold statement in a driven world.
Absolutely. And I think, in answer to your question, it's both. It's been both the topography and the cost of development as well. But it's also quite a unique proposition that the previous park, that was Mowbray Park, that they've had, that is being redeveloped. But I think because they're looking to bridge the two communities, they are looking at developments which are car-free developments. So rather than bringing cars into the residential neighbourhoods. They're looking at other ways through multi-storey car parks and the like, and repurposing some of those for mobility hubs and get more of an active travel in. But because the park is kind of a centerpiece of it, yes, there's obviously practicalities of getting down to the lower levels because the levels are so extensive. But I think there's a desire for public amenity and green space and benefit. The city's looking to be carbon neutral by 2040. Developments, they're looking at being climate positive. So the park is quite a key part to play in achieving all that. We're delighted being landscape architects as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Esther, do you want to come in with the next question?
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, and it's really exciting to see a completely new park being, delivered. It's amazing, and that amount of investment is super exciting. Could you tell me a bit about the sort of the timescales from here to getting the first kind of buildings or substantial buildings in place, and how you have planned for the sort of the footfall, the people, the vibrancy that will come with those?
Yeah, so as I say, the overall, the wider Riverside Park ultimately is scheduled for completion 2040, but the core part that are presented today with the surrounding urban development and residential developments will be programmed by 2030 is when they're looking to complete those. So,
and when will they start the building?
So they're in progress now. So on the Vaux Plateau, Brewery Plateau on the south side, the housing is under development. There's 2 tower blocks that are largely complete now. 2 residential clusters are currently under construction. They're out to the ground. And then on the other side of the park, just to the north of the multi-storey car park, that's going through development now. It's gone through planning. So that's going to be, should be starting, we anticipate, next year. So the whole strategy behind this is to get the park and the infrastructure in place first. So people get used to the movement routes, we can get some maturity in the park. And what the City Council are looking to do is create the infrastructure and create the enabling piece so that it's development ready. So that's accelerating when development can actually take place by getting all these moves sorted, getting the parking situation sorted, getting the travel route sorted as well, and all the services and everything. But yes, developments are currently under construction to the south. They've just gone through planning on the north side as well. So now that we've got the bridge link in, there's already some food and beverage facilities at the stables as well set up, so that's creating a community draw. And Vestry have come up with the development for the first parcel of community housing on the north side of the river. So it's a bit of a pincer movement. So it's not being done in isolation. It's just that the park is being developed in advance of the residential areas being completed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then time for one final question from James.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, James. Really, really impressive scheme. The scale is off the charts. It's fascinating to see what's going on there. My question was around your presentation and the submission both referred to being SUDS led, and obviously with you next to the river as you are, and water management being a big issue. I was just interested to know a little bit more about the SUDS interventions that have been integrated into the scheme.
Yeah, we've enlarged it from what it was before. So there were smaller SUDS features that were constructed to support re-engineering of the main public highway to the south. And then as each development is designed and developed, that has its own sustainable drainage strategy through permeable paving, through swales, through small scale attenuation facilities. That all then connects and feeds in to these water gardens that we've got in the Southern Gateway. We've enlarged those. We've reprofiled it so it doesn't just look like engineering led solution. we've crafted it and sculpted it so that we can get more habitats in there. We've got wetland areas in there as well, so we can create interesting habitat through fluctuating water levels. But those southern ones are designed to permanently hold water, and then they'll flow over through these weirs and terraces, through reed beds, etc. And then further down into the park, we've got another set of water terraces, which again provides further water conveyance and attenuation, and then it gradually gets discharged into the river. So I guess it's a multifaceted approach from all levels. So each development has to address its own water attenuation, but it's all channeled through the park.
Fantastic. Thanks, James.
Thank you, James. Thanks for your presentation. Thanks. Okay, and we've got one final presentation before we take a short break. So next up, we're going to hear from King Street, Manchester for Bruntwood and Trafford Council with Field & Clegg Bradley Studios, Studio Mutt, Exterior Architecture, Booth King Partnership, Civic and Avison Young. This will be presented by Adam Booth, Associate, and Catherine McMahon, Associate at Field & Clegg Bradley Studios, with Lydia Skinner, Marketing Manager at Bruntwood Town Centre Brands.
Hi, thanks, Laura. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. We're actually here with Abby from the Bruntwood team. She's leading on all the initiatives that's going on at the minute, so we'll share her for the Q&A. But yeah, I'm just going to give you a very quick summary, I guess, of the master plan and how that's led to the first phase, which is obviously the catalyst for the journey of this master plan. So King Street, as we know it, is the first phase that's been delivered now. That was informed by a review of the wider master plan and opportunity. Next, Catherine, do you want to jump on, please? So the master plan started back in 2019, and we've just, late last year, we opened up phase 1. So it's very much in its infancy, but we've delivered on a concept and an idea to sort of, which informs the wider master plan and future phases. And that opportunity was born out of an existing mall site in Stretford, which is only 15 minutes away on the tram from Manchester city centre. So it's really very much about understanding what this mall site needs to be, how it can be right-sized as a town centre for a place that's so close to a major city centre. And at the minute, it's quite a isolated, disconnected, car kind of road-dominated place with kind of sprawling, oversized retail that doesn't connect to the neighbouring communities, and is doesn't really draw on how it can connect and be permeable to residents that live in the area. And part of that is, we acknowledged at one point that that mall was, fit for purpose. It was the future of retail at one time, the big format, arrive in your car, that kind of suburban approach to retail trends. Muhammad Ali, as you can see in the third picture from the left there, was once on site and opened one of the stores. So the appeal, obviously, in days gone by was there, but that it's a far cry from what it was in its pomp. It's very much now a kind of vacuous, or was a kind of vacuous, part empty mall that is closed off after kind of 5 o'clock. So it doesn't really serve its community out of hours, doesn't have that nighttime economy. So it's very much about how we can then look back in time, I suppose, at what maybe was there before the large format, and maybe something that was more in keeping with the kind of Victorian grey of the streets around, something that was more kind of appropriately sized for its community, being so close to the city centre, which you can sort of see on the skyline on the image on the left. And what we did find was that there was a much kind of tighter grain and human scale of streets that run through the wall site. It included sort of little open spaces, civic gestures in those moments that kind of defined it from the neighbouring streets, predominantly residential. And it even had some nighttime economy. So it had the picture drone in the bottom image there, that again was something we wanted to lean on in terms of that wraparound offer, I suppose, beyond 9 to 5 in the place. So initially we had this idea about trying to sort of build upon the civic pride, I suppose, of the place and the history of the place. And we had lots of extensive consultation about how maybe we can bring back this idea of King Street, which was the main high street, with a town square and some nighttime economy, and how the improved public realm that had already happened with the future high street funding to the road to the north of the site, which was de-engineered and lots of landscaping improvements, how all of that, increasing that footfall and connectivity, could help really make a thriving community centre for Stretford. And we wanted that community-led spirit and pride to sort of inform our take on that. And I think there was lots of encouragement and buy-in to that. You know, a broad community, diverse community, and it was about how we can make it serve everyone in that community. And actually, what we found after we looked back at what had come before, there was a remnant of King Street still on the mall site. It's closed off at the end by the front doors that enter the mall, but we felt that we could reintegrate King Street by one simple move, which was taking the roof off, revealing these hidden buildings, working with the existing buildings, and that unlocks the opportunity for the town centre and for the wider master plan. So we then set about consolidating the retail that was there and the opportunity for some future retail and experiences towards this King Street set of spaces, set of streets that were unlocked by the removal of that roof. And they kind of pivoted around connectivity north, south, east, west to all the surrounding neighbourhoods and culminated in a town square. And we felt that that town square could then be the heart of this new high street and have that nighttime economy. And therefore we felt actually what was there before then is kind of more in keeping with modern trends of retail and town centres. So a place where you can live, work, shop, meet, and be a kind of true kind of 9 to 5 and into the nighttime economy of experience and community engagement. And King Street was the first phase of that, and how we did that, Catherine's going to explain now.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So the decision to remove the roof really kind of reframed the way we looked at the scheme and made it more a story about retention and reuse of existing buildings. We took the roof off the spine of the mall in the central atrium, which revealed 3 buildings which were pretty much left intact. The strategy was then to upgrade the facades of the buildings with internal insulation, to retain as much as possible, to retrofit shop fronts with improved U values and improved thermal efficiency, and really only add to what was there in really key moments to enhance the scheme in intentional moments and spaces. We collaborated with another architectural practice, Studio Mutt, who have experience in exhibition and shopfront design, and we really studied the character of these existing buildings to look at how we could frame them, put them on display, but also overlay a more modern, current Stretford aesthetic using cues taken from the surrounding architecture and Stretford's history. And I think it just became more and more apparent that although, you know, we wanted to add an identity to these buildings, it was more, the scheme became more about the spaces between the buildings. So reinstating King Street, as Adam mentioned, and creating connections to the north and south of the site. And the following slides are just a series of before and after pictures, which hopefully really demonstrate the impact of removing that mall roof and creating new public spaces. So this is King Street. The image on the left, the before picture, an artificially lit space, slightly oppressive, you could say, and within a struggling mall, struggling to attract and retain retail tenants. And on the right, King Street as it is today, full of colour, intention, identity, community life, and really importantly, open to the sky. At the heart of the scheme, a new public square, so Tony Lloyd Square, which really anchors the development. And there's a few kind of key civic moves and gestures here. We've incorporated a town clock, increased the scale of some of the retail units, so as well as providing a space for the community to gather, it's a space that can really draw some of the more kind of destination retail and leisure uses. Proof of concept there, I think, is one of the tenants that are currently occupying one of these units is an independent cinema, which will hopefully provide activity which spills out onto the square and activates that square from a day during the day through to the night. And it's also a really nice nod back to the picture drone, which was previously on the site, which attracted footfall and activity through the site historically. Connections to Stretford and existing neighbourhoods. We've got Pinnington Lane here, which was previously almost a back of house entrance through a service yard, now opened up as a really key north-south access through the site and beyond to the wider master plan. We made some kind of light touch interventions to the MSC car park to allow for future retail tenants to occupy the ground floor in the perimeter of the site and to connect into the previously completed Kingsway scheme, which really improved walking, cycling routes and greened up that Kingsway perimeter of the site. And then Bruntwood and the JV made a really bold decision, I think, to open up the street to the community before any of the retailers were actually in situ. They hosted a really kind of well-named, I think, King Street street warming party, which was really well attended. And it really just signaled that this space or these spaces were designed for the community, for them to activate, for them to shape. And it also gave Bruntwood the time that was needed to allow the retail occupancy to kind of develop a little bit more organically to attract the right retailers for the town. It's also given Bruntwood the opportunity to bring in some kind of more interesting creative uses to these spaces with early tenancies and meanwhile uses. So we've now got podcast studios in Stretford, we've got a community radio station, art battles going on in the existing mall. And also an opportunity to use and activate some of these retail units with community uses. Bruntwood's been really heavily involved with some local community groups. So a couple of those are highlighted here. Stretford Stride, which is a female collective of artists who have put on and curated free arts and crafts events for the residents, which both occupy the spaces, but also really importantly spill out into and activate the streets and the squares and the retained areas of the mall. Abby from Bruntwood can maybe give us some more. She's gathered some quite quantitative data on the impact of that community engagement, and she'll be with us for the Q&A. But just to finish up on that slide, just showing that the King Street phase of hopefully the first step towards the completion of the wider master plan to create a greener, safer, thriving neighbourhood in Stretford Town Centre.
Thank you, Catherine and Adam. Okay, let's hear from our judges with their questions. James, do you want to go first?
Sure can. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Adam. That's a really interesting project and great to see the community so involved in the space already. I suppose my question was around how the design helps to activate the street outside of those shopping hours. How's the community involved in the street kind of outside of the normal kind of shopping times?
Abby, do you want to say that?
Yeah. So I'd say even before the street opened, we opened in August last year. It takes quite a long time to engage community and build something authentic. So we actually started with kind of imagining and repositioning some of the vacant shopping units. There's something quite exciting about opening up a mall that people have lived next door to for 30 years and saying you can come in at night time and this can be a space that you can be creative in. So I think a series of events that we did was about bringing the community into the kind of abandoned shopping units and creating some really interesting moments. So we held raves in the Boots Pharmacy. We turned the pharmacy counter into the bar, and we ended up having Bicep, who are like a electronic music duo that tour all over the world. They came and played, and that was amazing because that brought people in, but also kind of different generations. We had 3 generations of one family on the dance floor that night, and when you look at kind of the audience data about that, you've got 50% of people are from Trafford who are coming to those events. So there's the kind of wider appeal, and you're bringing people in from different boroughs and different cities, but you're also, we've got that really local feel. And we did a whole series of those, and then we also did art battles, art exhibitions, yeah, just a load of different events that would bring in different kind of parts of the community and build that nighttime economy. So now the street's open, that kind of is built, and those kind of events still carry on the street and in kind of the different units.
Amazing, thank you.
I love the sound of a rave in a boots.
Yeah.
Claire, do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, the community events that have gone on there, you can really see how the place is starting to thrive. I just want to ask a little bit more about the wider master plan. Where does it go from here? Is the view to extend that with further retail and further civic use, or will there be residential mixed in? What's your further aspirations for the place?
I mean, I'll start, I suppose, and that we can maybe follow. But yeah, I guess the original intent was to try and consolidate and right-size that town centre, that retail offer to the northeast corner, to then unlock the wider site. And that wider site, obviously, you know, it's a long-term plan. It's going to include more kind of urban living for Stretford, mixed use, lots of more retail, more leisure spaces, more open spaces, a park space beyond the town square, so you kind of get kind of hard and soft within that site itself. So that's kind of architecturally what we were intending to do from an urban design point of view. And then obviously Abby could probably talk a bit more about the longer term vision.
Yeah, I think it's all about putting the community at the heart of it. I think from kind of our plans this is kind of in the next 12 months, we're working a lot with it's about not filling the retail straight away. It's about kind of holding our nerve and making sure that the use that we have in Stretford is the right retail mix and leisure mix. So with those kind of vacant spaces, we're having a lot of fun with meanwhile use. So kind of briefly mentioned in the presentation, we've got an unofficial Stretford museum, which is mainly because Trafford doesn't have a council funded museum and nowhere to show its local heritage. So we've kind of, while we can't have an official museum, we've got an unofficial one, and that's then led to kind of 7 community commissions where we're kind of curating collections of kind of never seen local heritage from people's lofts and attics, and we're working with a wide range of community kind of advocates, I guess, to kind of bring these kind of local Stretford histories to the high street. So that's kind of an example of a project that we're kind of building over the next few months.
I think that what's really good about that is the journey of the master plan from, you know, an opportunity, looking at an existing ball site and how we can invigorate that and create vibrancy, but then how through the process things are being unveiled. You know, what's to say that there's not a museum that comes forward in phase 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's a kind of whole progress and journey to the brief as things kind of unravel.
Yeah, great. That's a really, really exciting approach to take.
Thanks. Esther, do you want to come in with the next question?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say because the presentation was great and I've got 4 questions. I know we don't have time. So I'm going to try and ask 2 if I'm allowed. So one is like, were any of the original businesses kept, and how kind of what's the economic impact? Have you kind of measured that, started to measure that, or have plans to in terms of footfall and usage? I know you've talked a lot about how sort of you've got people over sort of longer periods a day, but can you just say a little bit about like that? But I do want to ask my second question after as well.
Was that uses?
Yeah, so I think the first part of the master plan was making sure that everyone who was there, the right sizing and consolidation was about the opportunity for them to stay, and it was only kind of looking at the empty units being, you know, removed, if you like. Obviously,
Right.
I've done a lot more work in terms of.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is we've retained and added kind of like the services you need for a town centre. So when the post office was in the WH Smith, we've found space for the post office and that stayed. We've got a high street bank, we've got a pharmacy that's about to open, I think, in the next 2 weeks. What else have we got? But yeah, we've got every kind of high street service that you'd need. And then yeah, with the retailers, we've kept several independents from the mall, some that have been there there's one shop that celebrates its 50th year in Stretford next year. So it's also about working with them and making sure that we've kept those independent businesses that were in the mall in the scheme, and then there is still kind of that space for the new retail.
Great. Can I just
Go on
really
then, Esther, then
Oh,
you can
thank
ask
you. I'm
the next
really
one.
sorry. I know we're on timers, but like this is so interesting and exciting. Like, do you think this kind of idea of taking the roof off malls is a kind of prototype? Could you adapt that to other sites, or were there very site-specific conditions here?
I mean, I'll give you the first answer. Maybe Catherine can give you the second answer. So, from an urban design kind of concept point of view, we thought it was, you know, really, really obvious and intuitive to just simple move, be able to work with existing buildings. Obviously, there's a whole sustainability narrative around that. The reality of that, Catherine could probably talk a bit better too in terms of how that could be rolled out, or maybe kind of lessons learned and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't come without its challenges. We didn't really have time to talk about it in the presentation, but I think one of the unique site challenges and opportunities we had was it wasn't just a 60s shopper mall. It was a 60s shopper mall that had been built on top of an existing network of streets and buildings. We didn't really get the opportunity to look behind those buildings and see what was there as the mall was live. So it was really a case of looking at historic photos and learning as we went. The design of some of these units really changed quite radically based on opening up works as we went. But I think it's all added to a really colourful street front and really interesting character. Your question about whether that could be rolled out in other places or whether it was site specific, it would, I think in a way it is site specific because we were given such an opportunity with the existing buildings. Not to say that condition doesn't exist elsewhere, and we've learned a lot through doing it, and I think I'd still do it again, despite the challenges. I think it's the end result is really quite remarkable, and we think really quite unique. It was incredible to stand in those spaces once they were open to the public at the street parties. You know, there's everyone involved was just so proud of what we'd done. I think it would be incredible to be able to roll that again in other town centres.
I think the biggest probably appeal for this condition was that the whole concept of King Street and the history of King Street, it was there, the remnants were there, and they were undercovered, and then they've been added to with the kind of big format post-war kind of modern mall. So I think it was more kind of, if that street had been knocked down and it was all new buildings, there was no kind of existing heritage there, whether they would be fit for purpose or be worth keeping. I guess that's where it probably does become slightly site specific. But heritage, Stretford did have that heritage in that street.
Thanks. I think that's all we've got time for, but we could quiz you on this forever. Great. So that concludes the first half of this judging session. We're going to have a 10-minute break, so grab yourself a cup of tea or a coffee, and we'll be back in 10 minutes for more pineapples. Welcome back to the Festival of Pineapples, the live judging of the Pineapples Awards for Place. We've had some great presentations this morning, but now we're on for a second round. So I'm Laura Mark, I'm the head of casework at the 20th Century Society, and I'm your chair for this Place in Progress category. The Pineapple Award recognises a place that is partway through its development cycle and has made a promising start on the journey to completion. The judges are seeking a project that, even unfinished, is already fostering community, welcoming visitors, attracting tenants, and contributing to urban life. The category is sponsored by Tectonics, who are partnering with us on the Pineapple for Place in Progress because it believes small touches of quality in the public realm can have a big impact. So now we have some great finalists to share with you. A reminder of the rules. Each presenter has 10 minutes to pitch to the judges, who then have 10 minutes to ask questions. After hearing all the presentations, the judges will deliberate in private to decide a winner. So who will win the Golden Pineapple? That will be announced at an awards party on the 22nd of April at Trinity Buoy Wharf in London. Tickets to the party are on sale now at thepineapples.co.uk. A selection of finalists will also be invited to present their project on stage at this summer's Festival of Place on the 10th of June at Box Park in Wembley, London. And feel free to use the emoji button at the bottom of the screen to cheer on all the presenters. There's also sound effects, which James has been trying out too. And you can share comments in the chat. the judges will be the only ones asking questions to the finalists. So now to welcome back our 4 excellent judges, we have Will Sandy, who's founding director at Will Sandy Design Studio, Esther Everett, the director of placemaking at the London Legacy Development Corporation, Claire Sanders, a director at JDDK Architects, and James Gosden, the specifications director at Tectonics. So it's now time to hear from our next project. A reminder that presenters have just 10 minutes to pitch their project, followed by a 10-minute Q&A. So first up is Mayfield Phase 1 in Manchester, for the Mayfield Partnership, Landsec, Manchester City Council, Transport for Greater Manchester and Platform 4, with Studio Egray West, Morris & Company, Civic, Bennett's Associates and Shed KM. And this is going to be presented by Henrietta Noun, who's a development director at Landsec. So you've got 10 minutes, Henrietta.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, all good.
Thank you for having us. Welcome to Manchester's new green revolution, that is Mayfield. I think that's going to move. Oh, there we go. So hopefully some of you have been able to come and see the site, but Mayfield is a 24-acre mixed-use new green district for Manchester city centre. Which is sort of a truly unique and distinctive part of Manchester where historically there hasn't been much green. So we're sort of bringing that back as a whole new green district. The site is 24 acres in total. Of that, at least 50% of that will be public park. And the full master plan will deliver 2,000 homes and about 1.6 million square foot of grade A workspace. And then a retail and leisure offer that we've got on site will continue, which is going to generate at least 16,000 new jobs. So back in 2017 is sort of where our journey began on Mayfield, and the Mayfield Partnership was formed. The partnership is a public-private partnership between ourselves as originally you and I, and now Landsec, and Manchester City Council, Transport for Greater Manchester and Platform 4. So we're a sort of 50% private sector, 50% public sector, and then act as a development manager for the entire estate. And the photo you can see here was the depot when we first got involved back in sort of 2016, 2017. And the reason you and I were selected as the development partner at the time is part of our bid was to protect the depot. The original master plan was to remove the old depot structure that used to be the home to Mayfield train station. And part of our sort of pitch at the time was actually a campaign to save the depot. This is a tidied up version of the depot, again, sort of back in 2016 when we first got involved. If you get the opportunity to go in there, it feels like the most amazing space, and it's not listed, interestingly, because it's beauty in a way. It's the culture of the interesting history that it's had in this space, as well as sort of the beauty of the old bricks and the steel to work out what's sort of the best thing to do to bring that back to life. And then in 2019, our sort of placemaking journey properly began. So we entered into a partnership with Broadlife, who are our operating partner. And since we opened in 2019, we've had over 5 million visitors. We've had sort of a mixture of awards from best nightclub in the world, sort of one of them. But the interesting thing for us is more than sort of being a warehouse project or a nightclub. It's been a place for the community to come and take what was a derelict site for at least 60 years back into the city centre through a mixture of activities from art galleries. The RHS did their first urban show in the old depot. We've had lots of music videos filmed there, films and TV programs filmed there, fashion shows, and sort of it goes on and on and on of the different uses that we've had there already. And all of that has helped inform now sort of the future design that we're doing in a mixture of spaces. So that was from 2019. This is the space when it's got 10,000 ravers in it, which is a pretty interesting thing to see. And then this is sort of the mixture of different activities I mentioned. So sort of from the RHS show doing its first urban show and it getting sort of the attraction of a completely different market to sort of who they previously targeted, to sort of a fashion show to a completely different audience, bringing back Manchester icons. So Liam Gallagher's filmed a couple of music videos there. It was used as sort of a part launch for the Oasis tour, coming back to Manchester at the beginning. as well as a mixture of sort of from Batman to different immersive experiences, where we're regularly now pitching against other European cities and regularly selected for shows against some of the London venues now, which is interesting, including a Banksy exhibition that starts on site next month. And then in 2022, we opened the first phase of Park. So this is the first 6.5 acres of Park. It's Manchester's first park for over a century. And I could talk about this for 10 minutes on its own, but hopefully you've seen it. It's a beautiful place. And the amazing thing for us is we've had the ability to watch people use that now for over 3 years. And it's changed the way we've thought about the design now for the future phases that are coming forward, because as much as we sort of try and plan for these things and do lots of public consultation, when people are using the space, it's always sort of a bit different. And it's been a really good learning experience for us with then sort of what's coming in the future. So that's as the park was delivered. So the picture on the left is 2019, and then the picture on the right is what it looked like when we finished the park in 2022. So now sort of the phase one, which is what we're here to talk about today. So there's a big piece of work that's now on site with the linked with our first office building designed by Morris & Co, the Republic, which is on site now with Balmer and Kirkland. And also a separate big infrastructure package, which is being delivered at the moment, which is the pedestrianisation of the route from the station to the park. And again, from the success of the park, it's really sort of pushed that brief that the park grows out of the space, and actually sort of the park will be formed sort of actually linking right up to the station. So as you leave the station to the left, you feel like you're part of the park. And again, it's been an interesting one for sort of design. We originally had the first phase, the first couple of buildings designed, and we went back and changed those once we saw the success of the park and how it was used, and led to sort of an SRF change of where originally it was a park in the centre with buildings around it. And we've taken that out. So it's a park that wraps around the buildings, and even the interior design of the buildings is intentionally designed to be sort of an inside-outside space. And there's a intentionally blurred line between what's inside and outside. And then so the sort of the phase one that we're talking about today in the context of the wider master plan is the Poulton, the Republic and the Transport Hub, which is the same as a mobility hub. And then the first residential phase of 900 homes designed by Studio Agro West and Shed KM. And so in social value terms, what we've delivered so far at Mayfield has been sort of far exceeded what we ever expected. We've always sort of placed social value at the heart of what we're doing at Mayfield. Back in 2017, we all agreed to an objective of this needs to be a place for all. And we sort of hold ourselves very accountable to that and constantly test our thinking of, is this still a place for all? How do you make sure that everyone from different walks of life, from Manchester or not, feel that they're really sort of at home and very welcomed in our place? So then in summer 2015, in a true Manchester way, in July, we had a very rainy day for our start on site event that meant we had to quickly change plans. But this was sort of the milestone of starting on site with the Republic, with a big party locally to Manchester. It's taken a lot of people to get to this point of having the park and the depot operating the way they are, to then have the first big office building being built speculatively on site. And then this creates a new front door. So the infrastructure package, which is now on site. And again, I don't think we would have done it to the scale that we did if we hadn't made the conscious decision to deliver the park first and see how people use it. It's then really informed things like this new front door and led to sort of really interesting conversations you can't do until you're in progress. So we were approached by Microsoft, who were launching the Intelligent Garden at the RHS Chelsea Flower Show last year. And the gardener that they used for it, Tom Massey, had used Mayfield Park as his design inspiration because of its strong story of reclamation. So we were very kindly gifted this garden that's now sort of as part of the pedestrianisation works on site at the moment is being put in place. And it's the first time there's been technology that taps into the trees to be able to tell us from an estate perspective what the trees need to be able to really not only survive, but thrive in a very urban environment. That will be rolling out across the park. And then we've got a series of different activities that come with that from June this year. That's sort of our 2026 activation strategy. And then another sort of smaller piece to the puzzle, but it's so sort of culturally important to us, the Star and Garter pub just here to the left, which is a Grade 2 listed structure. has the most amazing history to it that I could talk to you about for much longer than 10 minutes on its own. But there's lots of pubs and small music venues in Manchester shutting. So as a partnership, we thought it was so important to actually sort of keep that and make that the heart of the project as part of this new landscape space, which is also reopening this summer. So now we're sort of launching our work in a park with the first office building that you can see there. This is the Morris & Co building that's built to the best of the sustainability criteria that you can deliver for a new office building. So that's on site now. Shortly followed by the Poulton starting on site this year, and also the Transport Hub, which is not only sort of delivering much needed car parking spaces and an enhanced sort of cycling hub. It's also got a mixture of sort of a cycle cafe as part of it, lots of additional things you need in the estate like Amazon lockers and things like that. So we've consolidated that services into one building, which has meant we've been able to optimize all of the other ground floor spaces to be open to the public and be an extension of the park. So it's the Poulton, it's the Transport Hub Bike Cafe. And then the first homes, I'm very conscious of not having any time left, but this is the first home, so 900 homes here, which is designed by Studio Egro West and then Shed KM, where we got a unanimous approval at Planning Committee last summer and are well into the sort of detailed design and procurement process now for a start on site next year.
Thank you, Henrietta. Perfectly timed. Will, you visited this site. Can I bring you back to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Henrietta. It's great to see the evolution of the project and this building on the success of the park and the depot. But I guess what I want to know now is, as people actually move onto site, who is it for? Like, it's great as a destination for local people to come to the park and rave at the depot, but who's the Poulton for? Who's the Republic for? And who's going to be moving into 1B?
So it's slightly dependent on sort of office demand. It's been a punchy move to decide to build a speculative office at the moment in the UK climate that we're in and in Manchester. So we've backed ourselves to do it, and it's been interesting actually the evolution of you and I being bought by Landsec and some of the evolution of Mayfield at the same time that really has allowed us to be in the position that we are. We see sort of the scale up in Manchester is very interesting. Lots of businesses are scaling up in Manchester, but also Manchester is attracting some very interesting national and international operators. So the Republic with the bigger floor plates of 20,000 square foot would be at that sort of a bigger, potentially sort of more corporate business moving into the space. And we're intentionally doing the Poulton at the same time with the smaller floor plates, because we see that as an opportunity to work with smaller businesses and are expecting to sort of have a co-working offer as part of that, so we can really help nurture it. It's something we've done again in our portfolio a lot with a company we had called Plus X at Hayes and then in Brighton. And by being able to keep control of it, we're really able to work with the startup businesses. They've all got different needs, and taking a cookie cutter approach doesn't work. So the plan for the Poulton is to work directly with those businesses that are in Manchester and want to grow, ideally then with the support of actually some of the bigger businesses that will also be in the space. And then the first homes, we are the sort of the base assumption for them is that they will all be rental. But a mixture of social and private rental apartments. And again, because of the lack of sort of green space in Manchester that we're very lucky to have so much of in London and take for granted, we've really looked at it differently of how do you attract families into a rental product. And it's small things like if you had kids and they're playing in the park, you don't want to walk through a building and take your wellies off when you walk into the doorway. So how do you sort of make the home feel like as you enter the building, not just as you enter your sort of flat in a building? So it will sort of be the demographic that we see already moving into rental product, but we think we've got a sort of different USP to really attract sort of a different audience. And interestingly, in Manchester, again, it's not had sort of a later living products that we've seen in other parts of the country, particularly in London. And if you were wanting to sort of take a change and have city centre living, being in a park sort of is the perfect setting for that. And it's the only public consultation I've ever done where people are asking to sign up for living in one of the homes when they're built, rather than sort of commenting on the design. And we saw that from a complete mix of demographic at our consultation.
Thanks. Claire, do you want to ask the next question? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, that was a really, really great presentation. Thank you. It was really interesting to see how taking the bold move of putting the cultural venue and the park in there first has actually informed the master plan and seeing how it's adapted over time. How you can tell us a little bit about the process of how you did that? Was that just kind of from observations and use, or was there formal events where you got feedback from people?
Complete mixture. So I think we learned that you get we did sort of many consultation events, and if you're doing a consultation event, you tend to attract a specific audience, and that's really interesting. But actually what we found is, as we were doing art galleries and things like that, we were there to talk about the project as well, and people were thinking about it differently because they'd just been through either the depot structure or the park. And in a lovely way, people did see it as a property development coming forward. They genuinely saw it as a place, which meant we got that learning from them about how do you continue to evolve that as a place. And now we're looking at, we've got Paul listening in, we're looking at the depot at the moment, because that will be sort of the next phase to come forward. And it's so interesting, from 3 years ago when we looked at that, we thought that some things were so important, and then we've seen the way that people use the park, and it's completely shifted the mindset about why a landscape-led master plan isn't sort of a property developer term. It's so important, and you see the people using it every day. And it's small things like a lady breastfeeding in the park, and she said, just would be great if we had this, and then that sort of formed part of the next design brief for landscaping. Or children's feedback when they're there playing football or sort of doing different sports, that again has led to the next stage of landscape. So it was sort of, the consultation was interesting, but what we've learned from people just using the spaces has been far more informative for us.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. James, do you want to come in with the next question?
Lovely, thanks, Laura. Henrietta, thanks for that. That's a really, really interesting project, really interesting presentation. I guess one of the things I spotted on the master plan was the way that the train line to the north has the potential anyway to really separate the site from maybe some of the surrounding communities. How have you pulled those communities through the site and really improved the permeability of the site?
So it's probably Mayfield previously had a big part to play in actually what defined Manchester city centre, as it did for a long time. And because of the scale of Mayfield and it being derelict for so long, and if you went to Mayfield sort of 20 years ago, you probably wouldn't be bragging about the reason that you were there, and certainly wouldn't be talking about it publicly. So it created this huge divide in the city, and the Ardwick community, just the other side of the road of Mancunian Way, as well as then the viaduct that you mentioned, that created a social issue, because how could you thrive in some of the other areas with this huge 25 acres of derelict land in between? And that was sort of one of our general approach always at U+I was to open up the site and start just communicating with people outside of consultation anyway. But it was a big lesson for us quickly there that people were scared to turn left out of the station. So it wasn't just, oh, do some uses. How do you actually change a mindset that's been ingrained in people for a very long time that it's an unsafe space, which was really challenging. And Broadwick have been an excellent partner for us. Just even small things like nighttime venues in the city. There's nowhere for the performers to go from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. when the buses start again. So we said, well, we've got the space, come and use it, and we'll create safe paths for you to be able to come and have a cup of tea here to wait, because you haven't got the ability to pay for a taxi at the moment, and those kind of things. So it made us learn on the job very quickly what we needed to do. There's big plans for Piccadilly, and interestingly, for the first time, all of the future regeneration in Manchester city centre all sits to the south of the station. So previously, Piccadilly was almost framing the city boundary, and actually Mayfield's sort of the catalyst now for the south, unlocking it. And then the relationship with Piccadilly is completely different, because Piccadilly will suddenly be in the city centre, sort of right in the middle of it, rather than the perimeter of it. So we formed we put together a working group with sort of the key stakeholders in that to have a combined voice for Piccadilly South, because the sort of the future of the way the city is going to grow is to the south. I could talk about that for about half an hour, sorry.
We've got time for one very quick question from Esther.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's like a massive project to fit into 10 minutes. So like, I know we can't kind of cover everything. I guess the thing that's really struck me by what you've been talking about is how you've been listening to people, adapting, being flexible, and like not being wedded to your original plans whilst keeping the vision. How will you continue to keep that identity and vision of this place rather than the mixed use development, and what will you not do?
a good question, and we talk about it a lot. I think it just makes you realise that so Broadwick actually are such a good example for us. They're an operator, and their background was in festivals, so they think about space so differently, and it's made us have such a level of flexibility in our design about an amenity space for the first residential building and things like that don't over design it and over sort of think you're placemaking, because you're not. You've got to have sort of the ability for the flexibility in the design for what changes organically, because that's going to keep changing. So you need to be able to sort of change with it to sort of stay current and stay to sort of the place that people want. So I think for all of us, we've learned so much from Broadwick. And previously the design team was sort of, that's the feature of Mayfield, this is the current bit of Mayfield, and there wasn't a blend. But we've really sort of challenged that by even doing sort of big days on site all together, where the design teams for the different buildings and Broadwick as the operator all come together, which from this year we're doing quarterly, to hear what each other are doing, and then doing sort of, rather than just design crits that we've always done, we're doing workshops with them to have Friends of Mayfield Park that we're setting up to protect the park. People from Friends of Mayfield Park will actually be part of sort of the design study with us and sat in the room, because they're thinking about it differently. Broadwick will be there as an operator thinking about it differently. And it does make it more challenging, but it keeps us on our toes, which we've seen the benefits of already, and want to make sure we're still capturing that.
Thank you.
Great. What would you not do?
That's all we've got time for, Esther. We can't.
Sorry.
We can't ask any more questions.
I'll have to find you somewhere else.
Exactly. Come to Mayfield.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to be fair to everyone. So yeah, we can't ask any more questions. Great. So now on to the next project. So this is Kidbrooke Park Road North at the Royal Borough of Greenwich for Greenwich Builds and Greenwich Council, with HTA Design, Durkan, WSP and OCSC. And this is going to be presented by Simon Bayliss, Managing Partner, and James Lord, Landscape Designer and Partner, both from HTA Design. So you've got 10 minutes, take it away.
Oh, hello. Hopefully you can hear me. Shout if you can't. I'm Simon Bayliss, Managing Partner, Architect and Urban Designer at HTA.
And I'm James Lord, Landscape Architect and also a partner at HTA.
We're going to talk about Kidbrooke Park Road North, which is part of the progress of Kidbrooke Park development overall, which is made of the north side and the south side. So the bit that's progressed to date and completed is the north. And the south is progressing rapidly towards completion later this year. So the north part of the project is 122 homes. They are all council homes for Greenwich, and it is a net zero project. When it's complete, there'll be 452 homes across those two phases. There's a mix of housing within the scheme, of which 32% is family housing, and we've got 10% wheelchair accessible homes. Remarkably, really, for a project of this nature, from the start of us being engaged in early 2020, just before the pandemic, the first homes were occupied in September of 24. So just 4.5 years later, through design development, through engagement, through planning consent and construction, we met people living in their homes. A couple of other features on the green stuff, James.
Yeah, so we'll explain a little bit later about the sort of special context of the site, but we've managed to achieve a really high urban greening factor across the site through careful planning of open spaces dedicated to nature and play.
And we'll talk a little bit about how we managed to reduce carbon through the energy strategy. And we believe when complete for both phases, it will be the largest new build council housing project in England. So just a quick overview of the site. You can see two parts of the site. The triangle outlined there in bold is the north, and the dotted line to the south is the south site. It was a site that was always in public use. It was an RAF site during the war. They used to float balloons up into the sky to put off the Luftwaffe coming in through southeast London. It's been a school for a period, but when we came to the site, it was vacant. It was actually a heavily contaminated site, which we had to obviously incorporate in the cleansing process. Also, part of the challenge really was that we had to phase the development such that the south part of the site may not be able to come forward, because at the time of us being engaged, it was zoned for school land, and they had to work through a process of rezoning it and moving it from a constraint that was placed on it. So we had to deliver a scheme in two parts that would be deliverable or not deliverable in the whole and still work.
And as you can see from the aerial photograph, it's a really fascinating part of London, and it's really dominated by this quite obvious green infrastructure networks, which extend further south and further north and east along a combination of rail, road and metropolitan open space, in particular down to the south where it connects through with the Quaggy and the Kidd Brook, which actually runs in culvert through this section of London, which is of course where the place takes its name.
So just a quick overview of the site that's been delivered, those 122 homes. The expectations that we would deliver quite compact, component-led approach to the housing. We've got a limited range of typologies. We had to design them to be as good as they possibly could be within some incredible budgetary constraints. And we had to design homes that could be easily managed by the council, returning to a management position from some time away. So those 3 blocks reconciled the geometry of that quite awkward triangular site and created this square at the heart, which has a sort of dual use.
And with it being fully affordable, it does mean that with the child yield calculation, kicks out a very, very high number of expected children that will be living in these apartments. So the most of the public realm is as a virtue of that dedicated to play. So areas 1, 2 and 3 on this plan are green public open space, but are also dedicated playable spaces.
And we also incorporated a nursery to the left-hand side of the plan for local residents. And also the interesting part of this square was that part of it is a permanent green space, but there is a meanwhile access road which will be removed once the full scheme has been completed. Just putting that then into the site context, you can see the massing of that simple family maisonette block in the middle, the white block, and then the 2 brick blocks to the either side, which have a little bit more height and density, and then the energy centre on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see some of the stats on the left-hand side. 100% of heating and hot water demand is met on site, and we've got 68% reduction in regulated carbon, some impressive statistics for delivery. That's all being tested in post-occupancy valuation. There's a few teething problems, but we're beginning to get some good data from there. And then that just puts the whole site into context with the south phase and the taller element of the entrance, coordinating a similar sort of range of motifs and architectural approaches to deliver the whole scheme. We were in lockdown fairly soon after we started the project, and of course there were no residents on site, but we did an online engagement process with local residents and surrounding stakeholders, and in particular the Thomas Tallis School. We worked with the students who came into our studio once we came out of lockdown, and we worked on a whole set of hoardings in commemoration of Stephen Lawrence, who was murdered not too far from the site, and many of the students got engaged in that process, co-designed with us. Just on the architectural strategy, as I mentioned already, about some simplifying down to kind of quite repetitive components, a very simple architectural approach around vertical emphasis, large openings, shading to minimise overheating. 80% of the homes are dual aspect. Of course, we achieve that through the maisonettes and the deck access blocks and a lot of corner flats. We have very good levels of daylight, but we've got very efficient, repeatable and varied housing design, which is used across both the phases. You can see there that kind of approach to repetition and those standard components. Houses designed to be as effective as possible to deliver the accommodation in the very best way, generous rooms in every single apartment type. And then if we look in a little bit more detail, you can see there the configuration of the maisonette blocks on the left-hand side. Those are repeated across all of the maisonette blocks on both the north and the south. And then an example of a 3-bedroom house, flat apartment on the right-hand side with that corner balcony and that dual aspect across with fantastic views across the site. We did look originally at a modular approach, but it was felt in the end from the council's point of view for procurement, it would be sensible to deliver a more traditional design, which I think actually accelerated their procurement and delivery in the end.
So when all the phases of the first and second phase are complete on this, will be a really thriving community in an amazing location, 2 minutes from the local supermarket down in Kidbrooke Village, 5 minutes across to Kidbrooke Station, a short walk to the local school, which is a very well-regarded local school, and on the doorstep of Cater Park, which is an amazing project, which itself won a Pineapple Award a few years ago, all within an easy reach of central London.
And just really to re-emphasise James' point about play, huge amounts of the public realm in the first phase in particular is given over to play space due to the high proportion of families on the site. But you can actually see there's quite a mixed community of all ages that do really enjoy that space as it is. There are lots of challenges with there being a building site still to the south, which obviously won't be there forever. And we expect when that second phase, the south phase, is finished later this year, the road will be removed, that central space will be enlarged, and it will be a really thriving heart, we think, to the community. Just because the residents have been there now for a little over a year, September 24, first residents moved in. We've done quite a lot of post-occupancy evaluation with and without the council. We took the judges to a couple of flats and we got a full range of feedback from the residents who are on the site. They're all happy to share their experience. Most of the residents came from across the borough, lots have been in temporary accommodation, but you can see from the stats there, 100% of residents comfortable in their home, 98% love the landscape, 95% love the general layout. Some really high statistics from a full response from all residents. And you can see, hopefully, there some of the smiling faces of people enjoying that. And then quite recently, the nursery has been finished. We've done some feedback with the nursery team recently, learned some quite valuable lessons around the relationship with the nursery and the blocks above, but it's a space that's working incredibly well for that. We think 60% of the kids are from the estate at the moment. There are some from away from the development. And as the south comes forward, we'll obviously expect to see more residents from the estate. And I think that's us. Are we done on time, Gavin?
30 seconds left. 30
seconds. And there's just an image of that architectural order, repetition and regularity, and just a glimpse of that concrete, which we've not really talked about, so that's an architectural motif, but we could pick that up in the questions if appropriate.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Another great project. So I'm going to invite the judges back now, and Esther, let's start with you this time.
Hi, thank you very much for that presentation. And I mean, this is the most incredible project in terms of net zero, largest new build counselling housing in England, addressing solar shading, dual aspects, brilliant. And thank you for the presentation. I think I'm really keen to kind of hear a bit more about how you talked about children at the centre of this, which is great. How do you see the site coming together as a real place? And particularly each of the residents, different generations, children having ownership over it as those spaces come together as the second phase is completed?
I think that for us, it's probably the hierarchy of kind of Cater Park to the south and the district centre around the station that steps from actually a very pleasant connection along a tree-lined street to a community square to a more private community, sort of secure, accessible for the community play area and landscape area through to generous oversized balconies. It's that sequence for me of spaces from the very public and the very, it's almost like a neighbourhood regional district park, I think, James. I mean, you can probably talk more to that, through to those sequences of very, semi-private, large balconies that people really occupy because they're large and they're well enclosed and they've got great views. And I think it just gives us the choice.
Yeah. No, and I think there is this really nice sequence of spaces. So in terms of how the north, to just be specific, how the north connects to the south, it will be via a street. So it's a very wide, generous tree-lined street with not a great deal of parking lot because of the PTAL rating of the site. We're sitting more or less on top of the station. So very, very little parking, which has given us the benefit of being able to green the streets in phase 2, dedicate the square in phase 1 to playable space, and also then dedicate the rear courtyard area in both phase 1 and phase 2 to a combination of communal gardens and dedicated play space, which are then accessible only for the local residents. So there's really a little bit of everything in terms of different typology of space through the development and a really wide range of ways that people can use it for different purposes.
And I think the architectural language and structure of the master plan creates so much overlooking. It is so active, really, when you're in any of those spaces that you can have your kids playing in one end. There are people sat quietly at the other end of that space, and it just feels like there's plenty of eyes on all of the open spaces. And I think that relationship between inside and out, even though there's kind of thresholds and barriers with deep balconies, is really successful.
And a very deliberate move on our part to create that substantial play space in phase 1, which will be expanded as phase 2 comes on, and very deliberately bringing the main paths that connect the street to the front doors through the middle of that play space. It would be very easy for us to have put it to one side and put a bow top fence around it and said that that's a play space and only children are allowed there. But we've very purposefully included the path that cut through it so that it is a communal space rather than just a place for children.
Thank you. James, you've also visited this project, haven't you? Do you want to ask the next question?
I have, yes, and a really useful visit it was. Thank you, Simon, for taking us around that day. First of all, I'd like to applaud you both on your Anton Deck style slickness of your presentation there. I thought the to and fro between you was very, very impressive. Yeah, my question was around the residents and how they, going forward, are going to be able to take a bit of ownership of the site, both the public realms, but maybe behind the into entrance halls and things like that. Is there an opportunity for them to personalise and have a bit of an imprint on the place, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I must be Ant. I think he's always on the left, but I'm not sure it's a compliment or not. But I mean, it's a real challenging part of the brief in the residents that have moved in. We didn't get the chance to meet before. We didn't know who they were going to be, so the engagement wasn't with them. So we didn't really have the input of them as a sort of end customer. And they've come from right across the borough, and we've had amazing conversations with some of the residents where we sort of said, what's this home mean to you? And the answer's been, I've never had a home before, so it means everything to me. And in the context of that, sometimes you think, well, perhaps nothing else really matters. They've got this fantastic new home where they can make their life. I think they've all got really fantastic balcony spaces, which many of them have grown things on. They've got little play areas in there. They've really occupied the balconies. I mean, we quite often sort of worry about people putting up raffia fencing because they're, spoiling the effect. But actually, it doesn't really matter what people do. I think so long as they are occupying and owning that outside space. So I think that's sort of the first thing. Everybody has some of that space. And the maisonettes down at the ground that front out onto the park, it's often quite a bold move to put people's sort of front patio terraces on that public realm. But again, people have kind of really occupied them. I think in the space, I mean, when we were there at the visit, Catty from our landscape team was sort of rejoicing in the fact that the kids had made a kind of mud pie on one of the table tennis tables. I think people feel like it belongs to them. And I don't know whether that's whether we did, I mean, it's maybe the points that James was talking about and how we mixed the access routes with the play areas, brought it all together. But it does feel like it's succeeded and the people have taken ownership. I think there are other things around the management of the homes and things like, new tech, MVHRs and cleaning of filters and things. And there's a building site next door, have definitely had some learning difficulties. It took or everybody a while really to understand that. But I think those, we're moving on through that phase. And I think in time, all of that will start to work more effectively. We'll all get a bit more practice in the handover process and the documents that we give people to understand how to live in their home. But I think, again, it probably comes back to the open space and the fact that people can be in their home lots of daylight, feel like inside, outside, and be healthy. James?
Yeah. I think, what we've provided is sort of, thank you, Ant, a loose fit structure for the long term, and within which there is a lot of adaptability and flexibility. We did at one point question whether we should be including growing beds, for example, and I think to talk to Simon's point about the fact that we have been able to talk to the community, this wasn't an existing community that were moving in en masse from another housing location. We didn't want to presuppose what that community wanted to use this landscape for. So we haven't included those, but we have included the adaptability for things like growing beds and community gardens to be incorporated in spaces. We know where they are, and if the request comes through and there is an appropriate governance structure around it, and it's something that can be sustained, then there are locations where things like that can be fixed into the project.
Thanks. We've probably got time for one last very quick question. So, Will, being the other person that's visited this project, do you want to ask the final question to our
I will.
architect of architecture?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you. What a fantastic and holistically sort of considered approach to a family and community space. And so I'm going to be tricky and ask a bit wider, given that you've got the council as a client. A couple of the people we met said they had concerns over the wider kind of connection and the busy roads. And so as you've established something quite unique, and Cater Park's also award-winning, do you think in time it will influence the kind of way that the larger kind of infrastructure will sort of soften and perhaps become more people friendly? At the moment it's still quite car centric, and obviously there's that barrier too. So I don't know, maybe consideration of the edge conditions of your red line as much as anything else.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked at the beginning of the benefit of being very, very geographically close to Cater Park, it is a pretty infrastructure heavy, big highways. Even the ramp up you get to the junction makes everything feel like it's moving quite quickly. And we had to remove some of the existing mature trees on the roadside, the street side, because of contamination. But we've replaced them with newly planted schemes. But there is a footpath in the south phase which is set back from the street edge, which I think when complete, there's also connections to the south through the scheme, which will enable everybody to, I think, pass through the development to the south and link more quickly to Cater Park without spending quite so much time on that busy highway. That said, obviously that road and the Lidl and the BM stores, those are really useful facilities on the doorstep of the community. So I think you're absolutely right. The hope is that as sort of car use and dependency does hopefully continue to decline, that highway at some point will be softened, downgraded a little bit. Obviously that's kind of outside of our red line, outside of our brief, but we've used the site that we had to connect through to the south as best as possible.
Yeah, there was very much a very deliberate move on that north-south run to connect more positively the experience of walking, exactly as you say, past all of that busy infrastructure, walking from the station up to Thomas Tallis specifically, and then back down from Thomas Tallis down to the station. And that's because that's a very well-trodden path, and one that you were previously going past an abandoned site with a barbed wire fence. And some trees that were growing out of a pile of asbestos. So the experience, it's kind of taken it into account. However, there is, as Simon says, definitely a significant legacy from the A2. So the old Kidbrooke Road that runs north and south through Kidbrooke Village is the old A2 until such time as they built the dual carriageway A2. So that little bit that runs past our site is a significant bit of highway.
Yeah, it definitely could be our down.
Which I think is a legacy piece which can be improved over time. It's increasingly, go back only 15 years ago, and very, very few people lived in this particular immediate location, and the character of it has changed enormously. And I think we've kind of set up some of the moves for that to be able to be further improved incrementally over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we've got time for. But thanks for some great answers to those questions. So next up is our final project of this category. So this is Station Hill in Reading for Lincoln MGT with Gensler, Arcadis, LDA Design and Future City. And this is going to be presented by Canon Ivers, Director and Landscape Architect at LDA Design, and Sinead McCarthy, Curatorial Director at Future City. So Canon and Sinead, you've got 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Just confirming you can see our slides okay?
Yep, that's all good.
Wonderful. I will kick off. So Station Hill in Reading is a mixed-use regeneration project in the heart of Reading by Lincoln MGT. It sits between the two rivers that led to Reading's establishment and growth, and immediately next to Reading Station, which has 14 million users annually and is one of the top 10 busiest stations outside of London. The landscape and public art-led master plan creates a striking new gateway to Reading and provides a new step-free, inclusive connection between Reading Station and the town centre by building a new bridge over Gerrard Street. The first two phases of the project have delivered the multi-award-winning office building One Station Hill and Ebb and Flow, an innovative build-to-rent community which has been named the best place to live in Reading by HomeViews. Nearly 2 acres of activated public realm and a 1.5 million art trail inspired by Reading unites the site. With lifestyle-led retail and leisure, including local heroes alongside global brands, Station Hill is redefining urban living while establishing a connected and dynamic place where people are proud to live, work, and play. Phase 3 will provide 600 new homes and more than 1,000 square meters of retail and amenity space throughout the site, over 2,000 meters squared of public realm, transformed streets, a play area, immersive planting, and 50 trees. The area has been undeveloped for 2 decades, with 3 different owners failing to deliver viable plans for redevelopment. In stark contrast to today, it was home to derelict Friars Walk Shopping Centre, which had been unoccupied since 2004, a 15-story 1970s office block that had been disused for decades, a dilapidated multi-story concrete car park, and Reading's bus depot. There was no pedestrian link over Gerrard Street, which you can now see centrally in this slide. So in essence, this project has completely transformed the arrival experience to Reading. People were once greeted by a stark multi-story car park and are now welcomed by trees, planting, public art, cafes, and shops. Reading is famous for the 4 Bs, beer, bulbs, biscuit, and bricks, which were produced in factories along the River Kennet and Thames, as seen in the diagram on the left. We translated the Bs from objects into experiences. Beer is about the social and leisure aspects of the site. Bulbs speak to the beauty of seasonal planting. Biscuits evoke community and gathering, and bricks are fundamentally about home and family.
Through creative placemaking, meaningful public engagement, and vibrant community partnerships, Station Hill has established what we call a 5th B, belonging. Throughout the development, the team worked closely with local groups and charities, hosted a Pathways to Property summer school, invited school children to create artwork for the site hoardings, welcomed students and graduates, and led regular tours and presentations for stakeholders and community leaders. The public art strategy, titled Painting a Portrait of Reading, set out to celebrate the town's heritage, while looking confidently to its creative future. Artists were invited to reflect local stories, pride, and shared identity, bringing communities together through ambitious cultural expression. Each artwork responds to its specific setting, framing the architecture and landscape in new ways. Commissioned with guidance from a strong public art advisory group made up of councillors, cultural organisations, and the design team, the works foster ownership, stewardship, and a lasting sense of belonging for everyone who lives, works, and visits Station Hill. The murals that you can see here, some of the working and the actual images of the complete ones, form key moments from the Station Hill Art Trail. Rules, Residence and a Rock Festival sits just below the station, while Rivers, Ruins and Regency anchors Friars Walk at the opposite end, bookending the journey through place and time. Created by local artists Stuart Melrose and Kev Munday, the murals explored 2 connected themes, so Reading's rich heritage and history and its vibrant present and future. It draws on research with Reading Museum, local archives and councillors, with community leaders also contributing, and the artists carefully selected stories and figures that shape the town's identity. Crucially, they worked with 24 schools, which was an amazing feat, I can imagine, and colleges across Reading, hosting workshops to hear directly from young people about the individuals and places that matter most to them. The result is an artwork that is made with and for Reading, celebrating its heritage, diversity, and shared sense of pride. The next piece that you can see here is called Pivotal, and it's a monumental kinetic sculpture by artist and architecture duo Neon. Bold and creative new chapter for Reading. It's positioned prominently beside the station, and it greets visitors on arrival and serves as a striking landmark and meeting point. It's inspired by the symbol of flags, an emblem of identity and community. Pivotal reflects the idea that Reading's future will be shaped by the people who inhabit it today. Just as Station Hill has been designed to adapt and evolve with the city, the sculpture embodies movement and change. It's composed of 73 brightly coloured rotating fins, each with kinetic elements that respond to the wind. The artwork transforms moment to moment, and by night it's animated by lighting that brings a further layer of dynamism. Visible to millions of passengers each year, Pivotal stands as a beacon of adaptability, optimism, and of collective belonging. Final artwork we'll present today is Seed by artists Rachel Champion and Jonathan Trait. It celebrates Reading's horticultural heritage, inspired by Sutton seeds, the famous B for bulbs, and captivating forms of seeds under magnification, powerful symbols for growth, potential, and transformation. The artwork features 3 orange steel panels that you can see just in the bottom right. and it depicts a pot marigold seed resting on a terrazzo plinth, which can also be used as a platform for activity, which we could see in the earlier slides. Made from recycled brick, another famous B for bricks, with 9 bronze reliefs showcasing the textures of seeds chosen by the local community, creating an artwork rooted in Reading's heritage and stories. And then so central to this project was extensive community engagement. The artist invited residents to share which seeds and plants they felt represented Reading and themselves through an online survey, with 112 participants contributing 67 suggestions, ranging from humorous to poignant. The artist built a rich picture of the town's collective identity. A shortlist was developed with the guidance of Reading botanist Alistair Cullum, who's based at the University of Reading, and ensured the selection reflected historical, cultural and personal significance. These are the bronze reliefs that you can see embedded in the surface to the left and into the actual plinth itself.
So inspired by the rivers of Reading, we borrowed from the nomenclature of a river to develop a narrative for the design of the landscape and public realm, which has informed the identity and sense of community of the place with the naming of the buildings in phase 1, ebb and flow. Banks define the buildings, they give definition to the public realm and provide active frontages. The eddies are off the main currents. They are defined by the spill out, those moments that you gather after work or during lunch, around coffee, around a pint, around food. The currents are the unobstructed flow of pedestrians, signaled by directional paving and simply just allowing people to move in an intuitive way. Boulders we define as those places of refuge off the main current, places where people will gather, where they sit, where they dwell during lunch, to enjoy the frontages, to enjoy the activity of the space. And finally, pools are those moments where you can come in physical contact with water, in this sense, being able to play in the center of Station Hill Square. Once the entire master plan is complete, it will deliver up to 1,200 homes, creating a vibrant community of more than 8,000 residents and employees. Phase 3 will provide 600 new homes and more than 1,000 square meters of retail and amenity space at the site, over 2,000 meters squared of public realm, transformed streets, play area, immersive planting, and 50 trees. Retail and leisure across Station Hill blends independent local operators like Siren Craft Brew, 1650 Coffee Company, and big name brands like Notes Coffee, and innovative leisure operators such as Flight Club and golf rooms. Nearly 6,000 meters squared of public realm with a variety of character areas has already been delivered, including a playful water feature, over 1,000 meters squared of planting, and 58 trees. A site-specific and Reading-inspired public art trail strengthens the sense of place and creates an inspiring route for people moving through Station Hill to the station and town center. The project has successfully established community events and initiatives, such as the Farmers Market at Ebb and Flow, 7,000 people at the Party on the Hill event, which showcased local talent, businesses, and restaurants. Sustainability is at the heart of Station Hill. One Station Hill is an all-electric building using air source heat pumps and targeting a BREEAM Outstanding certificate and EPC A rating. In addition, Ebb and Flow was the first residential development in England to achieve an ActiScore Platinum certification, demonstrating commitment to sustainable modes of transport.
We got a couple of seconds left, or are we done?
That's your time up, I'm afraid. Okay.
Welcome to Station Hill.
Thank you. Great. So James, you are the judge that's visited this project. Do you want to come in with our first question?
Yeah, thanks very much, Sinead. Thanks very much, Canon. That was the one project actually where I knew a little bit about the site previously, and it was brilliant to see the change that's occurred in such a short space of time. One thing that struck me actually walking into the space was there was immediately, and this was on a cold February morning, by the way, was the amount of activation in that space already. So there was stalls, there was things going on for people to see and interact with. What's the plan for those kind of things to carry on into the next phases? How's that managed and promoted, and how's that going to be become a kind of permanent feature ongoing into the future and into phases 2 and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, James. Certainly, it will continue. There's a major effort behind the scenes, as we all know, on these projects. A whole team of people that are bringing innovative and exciting ways of bringing life to public spaces. Phase 3 will continue that. It also has an anchor destination play space, which will have a component of public art integrated into it, more direct links to the town center. So it's simply bringing that third phase of the project along will enliven it, but also certainly there'll be areas of lawn space that could be used for events and installations. So it is intended to be quieter, more of a residential space that acts as a counterpoint to the more lively Station Hill Square and Friars Walk, which is, as you mentioned, it's activated with quite a lot of life and movement through it. So there will be a difference in the way in which the character areas work, but certainly everyone will come to the center, as it were, and use Station Hill Square as that main platform for events and installations.
And I think something else to mention, James, is that both of the murals and the flag are programmable artworks, so that they can be seasonal. And there's this real drive to create this sort of community hub, as Cannon's describing, at One Station Hill, where people come together and see the seasons through, etc.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, no.
Claire, do you want to come in with the next question?
Yeah, thank you. It was a really interesting presentation. You talked a lot about the public art integration and the art trail. Questions twofold, really. That the integration of the art into the space, do you feel that's actually changed how people have adapted and used the space to kind of appreciate those elements? And is there any measures that's being taken to continue that activation through the nighttime economy as well, or is it generally daytime focused at the minute?
So in terms of the change, sorry, I'll answer the second part first. The nighttime lighting, as I just described, sort of activates those spaces. So the idea is that the murals at either end that bookmark the art trail, they each turn on at night. So in the day, it's just black and white, which I think you saw in the images. And then at night, they are lit up. So it's this idea of activating the space. And even Stuart and Kev have designed in things where they wink at you. So you go past and each time you visit, there's different intervention or activation happening. So it's meant to sort of liven that space. Certainly. And then I think one of the key things in terms of the public art that we felt has been super successful is that, as I described with Rachel and Jonathan's project, and also with Stu and Kev's, which were more so, they really engaged with the public. There was a lot of consultation, working with people and sort of garnering that interest in what was going to happen and what was going to appear at Station Hill. So it was really bringing people on that journey and then being invested and having that pride in what was to come. So everyone had this expectation of something they contributed to, which I think has been a real success of these artworks. And so people visit time and time again to show off, I guess, what they've contributed to.
Yeah, I would add to that if it's all right, if you've got time. I think particularly the mural in particular, because it sits directly outside the station. There's an underpass that connects through, so people that are moving from the north of the station into Station Hill, it was a transient space. It was a place of movement, connection. It didn't necessarily have a focus or an absolute purpose. And what that mural has done is it has turned it into more of a destination where they've had a DJ and the mural is coordinated and responding to the music, and it's turned that space immediately outside of the tunnel into a dance floor. So that, first off, has been an extraordinary thing that wasn't really something that was considered as part of the big master plan, that the public art has really brought that activation. I think Rachel's seed in the center, as the image just passed by, has really created obviously a focal point. It's a destination, it's iconic, but it does double as that stage that people sit around and gather. And it does function. If there's a big event, you can see the performers using that as a platform. And then finally, the flag, which everyone can't miss. It serves that great function immediately of a destination to meet. It's a place to gather. It's a wayfinding device, but it also has that kinetic, dynamic movement that captures the wind at different places and catches the light as well.
Thanks. Esther, do you want to ask another question?
I'm keen to hear a little bit more about your client and how you came together to be part of this. Can you just speak a little bit about that, about the collaboration between Future City and LDA?
Sure, yeah. So Lincoln and MGT. So Lincoln is a US developer. This was their flagship UK project. So it was a chance really to bring what they bring from the States to Reading and to the UK in particular. They partnered with Arcadis and Gensler as the master planners and main architects on both One Station Hill office building and the build to rent at Ebb and Flow. As a part of that process, LDA Design was brought on as part of the very early placemaking process. So there was very much a public realm and public art led process. We developed the Placebook with Gensler and Arcadis, which focus very much on how do we bring local artists, how do we bring the voices of Reading, build on the history that we had already identified as being really rich. And that's really how Sinead and Mark at Future City got involved and started to really, I think, take the structure that we had developed with the landscape and the public realm and the history of the rivers to form Reading, and took it to another level and really brought that richness that you can see that the public art has brought to the public realm. Sinead, do you want to add to that?
No, I think you're covering it. I guess, yeah, we really took all the work they'd previously done before and built that into a kind of public art strategy, and then really considered artist briefs and what those opportunities were for artists and what we were looking to kind of do and, you know, innovate here and really engage with the local community. So yeah, I think that covers it.
We've just about got time for one final question from Will.
Thank you very much for a great presentation. Yeah, I think I want to come back to the art as well. I think it's a really innovative approach, and sorry if I missed it, but I want to know where the driving force of the art as the kind of centerpiece came from, and because many other people we've looked at today have talked about the storytelling, the narrative, carrying the community, and have done it in other ways. And your focus has been about this kind of narrative through the landscape, and then these key moments of art. And where did that come from, and how do you see that being adopted further through the scheme and on other projects?
So do you want to take that one? Yeah.
Well, you could start and maybe add up to it. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, well, just briefly, I mean, I think when we lay out our large landscape master plan, as many on the call will know, you're thinking, how do people move through the space? Where are they naturally going to gather? What's their sense of orientation, the wayfinding? And I think particularly in the States, it's more dominant that the landscape architect has a role in that. So Lincoln, I think, to some degree brought that to this project. They wanted the public art to be embedded very early on and to really have something that makes it a signature development. So certainly we were imagining where are those locations that you would want a piece of public art that's not just something people take a picture of, but really they interact and they engage with it. So we had identified where we thought those could be, but really it was, I think, the richness that the process that Sinead has really ushered in, because it wasn't just selecting an artist and then getting an art piece made. It was really the process, which I'll pass to you, Sinead, to finish off.
Yeah, I think that's key actually, is that we came up with the public art strategy based on the work that had been previously, but there's obviously significant amounts of research and thinking through the kind of heritage elements that were really important to forming that. And then in terms of what Future City do, is one of our key things, which I think is super successful, is creating these advisory groups. So the advisory group is made up of, as I mentioned earlier, councillors, local cultural organisations. So really thinking about what exists in a place and where the gaps are, what can we help to support, what can we help to elevate, etc. So it's thinking about those things and getting those local voices on board throughout the process. So the way we commission is to come with an artist brief, and then we follow those RIBA stages. So we are very much aligned with working with, you know, the landscape architects, with architects, and having that language together. So yeah, we go on that journey together and have design meetings and etc. etc. But really having that advisory group and reaching that community directly and thinking about the ways that we can enrich a project is key, and we tend to do that on the projects that we work on.
Thank you. That's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. But thanks again for your presentation.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. So that concludes the presentations of the finalists in this category. What a shortlist we've got there. So the judges will now retire to make their deliberations. It's not going to be easy. Thanks to all our presenters and all our judges, and to Tectonics for sponsoring this category. That's all from us now, but you can keep watching the Pineapples. If you check out the schedule button for everything that's on or to watch back, it's just at the top of the screen. Thanks for being here this morning, and goodbye.